Are you okay, Baphy? We ready to go?
Yeah, just getting the recorder on. Both are on. Okay, so let me get my questions. Claudia, you ready? Maybe you could start us off.
Yeah, so for what and why are we recording this grilling today?
Alright, everyone. Today we are here to grill Shane Bugbee on his recent timeline he made at the Satanic Temple. We hope to answer any questions of yours. We could perhaps do a second grilling at no promises if if you have any more questions on this grilling or the timeline, but we think we can get it all covered today. Claudia, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, so for what and why are we recording the grilling on the timeline?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I'm not really clear on that. It's Baphy's idea. I came up with an idea to do a timeline, and for a book that I'm working on, and you all are helping out with it. And so I felt the timeline was the best way to incriminate myself and others. I mean, you can't deny there's a lot of evidence in a timeline. And like the Church of Satan on their website, they pull out the archive.org. They go back and look at the Wayback Machine and for the Satanic Temple website, and they see inaccuracies in the beginning as they try to paint their story, the Satanic Temple tries to paint their mythology myth in a different color than what it was. And so as I started doing a timeline, it showed, I think for me, of course it's for me. I hate when fucking people say that when they're talking. Of course it's for you because you're fucking saying it. Anyway, within that timeline, it shows intent. And it started with when you guys did that 24-hour radio show, the spoof on the one we did. I don't know if it was a spoof, a tribute, whatever you want to call it. And you asked enough questions there where I went and did the anniversary show with Reverend Avi. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, wow, it's such a unique story. It's really like almost, it's poetic. It's a weird story between the three of us that were on that radio show and how our paths sort of, how like me and my partner, my ex-partner, how our paths intertwined and how we went about things, and we went off this way and Doug went this way. And you can see that in the timeline. Me saying it, for some reason, the timeline is important for this moment in time because people need receipts. I love that there's no belief left, but there's really no journalism either. It's just let's control the narrative. There's no one has come and asked me questions for over a long time. And then it was like Nannerl, you all, Joseph Rose from the Hail Satan podcast, which is what journalism is. You ask the source to, my words will incriminate me more or not. And so I see the timeline as something that is evidence you can't deny. That's one thing we're all stuck using is a calendar and clocks and dates, for the most part. So there, I hope that answered it.
Yeah, that was a pretty good answer. So what I plan on doing is just going through each one and asking why it's included. So
Okay.
bullet number one is 1980. Shane runs away from home first time. Why is this included?
Well, a lot of that, you're looking at a raw timeline. So I don't know if it would be ever made public, but it's for me to understand where my journey started. And it was right around there where I was being, I'm from plumber stock. My family's plumbers, stuff like that. And so I started to, this is how you're going to have to survive if you want to survive is be a plumber. And I saw my father be an alcoholic and abusive person. But I also, when I sat and watched him as a kid, I saw him have a big heart too. He had love, and I think he wasn't doing what he wanted to do. And so that sort of made me want to figure out how to do something I want, like I was always drawing pictures as a young kid, and that's how I would show people what I meant. And having to hear my audio and how I stutter, I get why I did that when I was younger. I would always present artwork. And so being homeless in a car and living on couches, I took that route to be myself, not to be a ditch digger, not to be a plumber, not to be an alcoholic and a hate-filled person. I wanted to figure out, I found this out, and when I'm writing this introduction, I'll read it to you in a little bit after we're done with this, I guess. But the only way that you're ever going to find joy in life is to be yourself, who you are. And that's the only real joy we have. We can pretend we have joy in all of these various ways, from food to drugs to whatever else, vices. But that's not real joy. Joy is taking the impulse that's inside you. It's not free will. It's not free. It's not, there is no, it's that impulse, that reptilian impulse to go, I want to go this way. I want to go make zines. I want to go do this. I want to ask these questions. That's joy. And so I just followed my joy. And it led me to living in a car, but I was still happy. I was ecstatic. I was putting zines out in Chicago, living in my car. So I think it shows my will. When you bring this up, I didn't even think why I put it on there. So it's interesting. I didn't even have this much thought into it, really. Just putting down my timeline. But it shows my will, my intent, and where I started. Like, this was impulsive for me to do. Ask questions like y'all do. And, that's I got to make it short. There you go. I'm going to get into Shane 3 times here, and I'm trying to communicate a little better. So.
All right. So the next one on this list is selling your soul to get an Ozzy Osbourne CD. How did that go?
Well, it's working out pretty good. I'm not digging ditches. That was just a fun moment in my life, but I remember really thinking about it. I was going to Catholic school. I was forced into having to go to Catholic school. And, I'm listening to this hard rock station in Chicago, and they're like, the Black Sabbath, they sold our soul for rock and roll. He played a song and announced it. And then he's like, Ozzy Osbourne, the lead singer, has a new record out. I'm like, I really want to get that record. I'd sell my soul for that, like rock and roll. Like I just ripped off that Black Sabbath thing. And I got the record a week later, and it was like, I felt like, wow, that was wild. I don't, because I'm a paper, I don't have any money. I was a paper boy, but my mom would lift my money. So it was like, it was hard to hold on to my money. And so, it's just funny, it's there to be funny.
It says you started reading up on Crowley.
Oh yeah. When I heard that, I was like, what the fuck is a Crowley? Like, when he said it, I was like, it was just, everything was perplexing back then. So young, every fucking thing was. But before that was Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven and My Sweet Satan. He'd play the record backwards. So all that stuff was in the Satanic Panic was happening, and it's always happening. And so, when the Mr. Crowley song came out, I was like, what is this? And I went to the library and looked that up. Yeah. It was cool. I liked Osho better, the Bhagwan, he was the guy I really read up on. Anyway, Jim Jones.
Can you explain further on Osho?
Bhagwan, I'm not going to be able to pronounce the name without murdering myself and others. I'm just going to go with Osho, but I like his other name. And he had a cult out in Oregon where he had all these different Mercedes-Benz every day, and he'd drive through and people would throw flowers at him. And I'm like, look at this fucking guy. Like, he's old dude, and people just love the fuck out of him. And then I look into it, and it's all about, peace and love and all this idealistic life. It was just cool. I loved I loved his hats. His whole vibe was cool. So, but I was looking, I don't know really why, people can analyze why I looked into cult leaders or Jim Jones and all that stuff, but I was really interested in that stuff. And it's probably because of how I was raised or something, a psychologist could probably break it down better than I was. I just know I was interested in it, and I went to the library and would do my research on it. It's always, this kind of stuff's always interested me. But it also interests me because it's like occult knowledge. It's the same with serial killers. The newspapers don't tell you enough. They didn't when I was a kid, and it's gotten worse. It's really bad right now because there's no more journalism. It's just a narrative being pushed. But even back then, they didn't expand on it. And I wanted a bigger story. I wanted the book. I didn't want the article that was in the newspaper. So.
All right, that killed two birds with one stone. That killed 2 points on the timeline. So next up, it says high school days. Why is this included?
Oh, just to show my age, my naivete. You know. I think I tried to put Doug's high school days in there too. I don't know really. I don't really know why. It's because it's part of a time, and it helps people date things like, oh, you were in. I think it helps. For me, I guess when I try to explain things to different generations, I'm older now, so it's important for me to say I was in high school then. But there's an observation I've had that many haven't had, and I remember being the first to put this forward. I don't know if it's popular at this point, but it was like school shooters started. We didn't have school shooters when we were younger. When I was younger, we had mass suicides. And so I think that's sort of, if historians were to look back, people that are actually, if that ever happens again, and if there's ever journalism again, you would have to look back on that time that I was a child and a teenager to see what influenced my ideas of getting into this. Like what influenced what was going on in my life in high school. That I dropped out of high school the day I turned 16. Like the minute I could get out of high school, I jumped. But it was like we had mass suicides. So what would happen is someone would kill themselves at school. And then 5 other people at that school would kill themselves. And then the next school would do the same. And then the school over there would do the same. And it was just like the school shooting stuff. It was like a mass epidemic. And then that grew into rage, a focused rage. And when Dylan and Eric, the Columbine shooters, did what they did, I was an adult at that time, and I wanted to advocate for school shooters because I was like, they are when people talk about art being an expression, I'm like, then school shooters are artists. I don't believe that, like art's just an expression. But they expressed themselves in a way that should have been analyzed by the media a lot better. A lot of their tapes were destroyed. A lot of their truth, what they put forward, was destroyed. I researched it enough to understand that I think that's a lot of the reason a lot of people were killing themselves when I was a kid. That's why I was like, oh, this is interesting, because they're attacking jocks and people who are bullying them and not letting them be themselves, not letting them find their joy. And when you're not able to have joy in your life, you're going to act out. You're going to fucking act out. And it maybe in 100 years, people will see Dylan and Eric as heroes, because they caused such a rift in the conversation. They sacrificed themselves to have a voice or a truth brought forward, and their truth was destroyed by the police. The media who covered it didn't cover it well, and that to me was sad, because I would have liked to hear their truth. I can't really judge them without it.
Yeah, it's too bad their stuff was destroyed. I thought their films were quite interesting.
Oh yeah, I was so into that thing, it was not even funny. I still am. I wish all that stuff would make it out.
Hey guys, to interject really quick here, it seems like me and Claudia have different forms of questioning. They want to question you on the timeline. I'm gonna question you on some common criticisms. So what I'm thinking is we could sort of have 2 parts in one recording of this thing. The first one is Claudia just walks through with the timeline, you explain a bit. Then after that, I jump onto some criticisms after. Does that work with everyone?
Yeah. I'll try to answer faster. I mean, this is what happens. I talk long, so.
Sounds good. All right, we'll resume.
Yeah, that sounds great. So next up is living on streets and couches. Why did you include that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I think again, it shows who I am. It shows where I come from. It shows the fry cook in me. It shows the class issues that I struggle with and fight to this day. Everything, a lot of my work is informed by class struggle. All of it is. Almost all of it when I look at it. It's my sculpt. I don't know how to describe my sculptures and abstract work if that's, but I think it is. I mean, even this painting I have up here, it's titled Prairie Fire. It's after the Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn pushing that forward. So my stuff is informed by class struggle, and it also shows the triumph of the will. And I say that to be provocative. It shows my will. I've survived a lot, and I keep surviving a lot. I don't know if I can survive much more, but I've survived a lot, and I want my credit for that. It's easy to be a privileged motherfucker with old money, realtor money like Kevin, and buy your way into things, or all these other rich pricks that buy their way into things. It's not so easy to do it living out of a car.
It's quite satanic if you consider stratification being important in Satanism.
That's one of the things that attracted me to Satanism. I wish it existed in this society. I'd be on top of all these bitches. And I wouldn't want to be on top of them. I'd be trying to help them up. Like, I don't even care. But exactly, I would have achieved a lot more had I had the privilege that Kevin and other people have, for certain. But that's just like we're hearing in our conversation today. That wasn't in our conversation earlier, but in my youth, but like we were today, people of color, gender issues, if everyone had an even playing field, we would all be, that stratification would happen, and you'd see a rainbow coalition on the top, multi-gendered, multicultural people that are on top, and that probably would serve everyone really well, having the smartest. And I don't even want to put people down for not, but it's just like stratification's not meant to be so judgy or elitist. It's just, it is what it is. And a lot of my libertarian friends or satanic friends, they have an idea like libertarianism, but it's like Ayn Rand. She has an idea, but I don't think anything like that can be implemented in our society unless we have like 10 generations of socialism. We have to sort of be able to burn away the rubbish of nepotism and elitist type stuff, and we have to give people a fair shot to get healthy generationally in order for stratification to actually work. And with stratification, you would have a natural libertarianism in our society, probably. Anyway.
Next up is you talking to a serial killer for the first time. So It says here that you were arrested and that you met a serial killer in jail.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So why is this included?
Well, because I work with serial killers. I've worked with serial killers, so people always put that on me. Like to present day, people look at that as serial killer worship. I never did that. I never made I thought it was weird when people were wearing T-shirts of serial killers. And the state's attorney of Illinois, I did an interview with him, and he agreed with like that is weird. And he said, I'm not that guy. I'm like a journalist. But it's important to let people know where my interests come from. I think. It's because I'm not a poser. Okay, my interests are pure. It's pure. I'm purely inquisitive. I'm trying to get an education that I was not afforded. I could not get into college. I could not do any of that, no matter, because money stood in the way of everything for poor. It always does for poor people. So I was determined to get an education. And yeah, chained to this guy, and he's talking about all this shit and then going to court. And, it's like they're talking in court. And it's also traumatizing for me. I didn't realize I had such a bad life until then. I thought everyone had the life I had. And so it was like, dude's in court before me, and they're talking about how he's got fucking chopped off boobs in his freezer for satanic rituals. and 2x4s crammed up, smashed up a prostitute's genitalia. That's in court in front of me. And I go to court next. The guy goes out of the room. I'm in court. And the psychiatrist, the psychotherapist would tell my story to the judge, and the bailiff starts to cry. And I'm like, man, I must have it hard. She didn't cry during that story. She didn't cry during the serial killer shit. So it's sort of like I wanted to understand, what that was. I'd come from a hard, dark life. So of course I'm going to study dark subjects to understand it. Yeah, I got to twist this up. What's next?
Next up, you create Michael Hunt Publishing.
Yeah, it's hard to remember all this stuff. That's why I did the timeline. You want to ask that? It's like I'm about to go on to another phase. My mind is going. I'm getting older, so I'm slower and I think differently. And I can't do this stuff again. I can't do what I did then. So it's important to put it down. Yeah, I started Michael Hunt Publishing to publish zines. To start. I wanted to be a publisher. I was writing about anti-censorship stuff then. And I was really into Frank Zappa got me into all that. Like I saw him on TV, and like I said, I was seeing my dad upset, and I saw this and it triggered me out, and I wanted to know how could censorship even exist? How would people let that happen? Why couldn't I say what I want? Maybe that's me being on the spectrum somewhere. I don't really understand that concept to this day, how people would limit their speech. I just don't get it. I don't really get it. As a human being, I cannot understand why anyone would do that, and how crippling and how awful of a life to have to be stunted on what you want to say. And in this country, we still haven't realized what free speech is. Everyone goes, there's consequences to your speech, but no, free speech is about not having consequences to your speech. No punches, no shunnings. It's just like people have to meet you and with a better idea, or they don't. The conversation has to evolve somewhere else, but it's not supposed to come to consequence for your speech. Speech isn't an action. And when speech becomes an action, it's different. And that means when people are like, I want you to go hurt these people, that's a different kind of speech that is a directive, and it's causing action. And our people cannot realize that free speech is probably one of our ultimate freedoms. If we were to express ourselves and not, it's for religious-minded people that want someone to express for them, and usually slaves, working class, they don't have time to think, and they don't have the courage to express themselves because it'll affect their bottom line, which is feeding themselves and their family. So anyone that does speak out is envied, and that's really sad.
Okay, so next up it says Naked Aggression, your first zine that you published of your own.
Yeah, that's where
How
I
did this
started
one go?
well, that's when I started publishing, I guess. Naked Aggression. Oh God, I wrote about that in this introduction. Naked Aggression is one of the first times I was shunned. I was a mayor of a town. One of the Naked Aggressions, a mayor in this town found it and was like banned it everywhere, and you couldn't have it, and it just started all these crazy problems. And the first one I did, it was based on Frank Zappa and the PMRC and all this censorship stuff that I was studying. And it had a headline, "Censor This Asshole," on the cover. And I went to pick it up. I had a printer because, we didn't even have photocopy machines then. I had to go to a legitimate printer. And paid all this money up front to get the zine printed. And I go there to pick it up, and he's like, yeah, we're not printing your zine. It's obscene. And I'm like, what? There was no nudity in it, nothing like that. And he handed me back the boards which back in the day, we didn't have any digital stuff. So we had to paste everything up, get it printed off from a professional, would print stuff off for you, these sheets of letters. It would be long like this. They would be long. Your articles would be long like that. And you'd have to cut them out and paste them up to make books or magazines. And all those were ripped in half. He ripped up my original boards. So it was almost impossible for me to print I did. I was able to put that back together and print the zine. But I couldn't believe that. It just blew my mind. I didn't understand it. And I wasn't even looking to get a reaction like that. I didn't understand political reactions. I didn't really get it. I was just looking to communicate, to communicate to people. And when he ripped up those boards, I was just like, wow. But it was attractive. That kind of stuff was real attractive to me. I was like, oh, I'm going to keep doing this. This is cool. In life, loved or hated, at least you're seen. That kind of stuff, you're talking to someone who was never seen by his parents or anyone. So it was like, oh, I'm seen. And yeah, so I was like, yeah, I'm going to go with this. I'm going to do this because love me or hate me, I'm on your mind.
All right, next on the list is the Milwaukee Metal Fest. Why is this here?
I think it's in the car. It should be there, but that was a big deal. I was working with metal, and that's where Might is Right came into my life. I was selling advertising for the Milwaukee. I was running the Milwaukee Metal Fest in part, and I came up with the idea to do a program guide and vendors and all this stuff. And that idea was was taken, and Lollapalooza did that later and invited me to be a part of that and all this, but that's a different story. And so we were working on it for years, and we were doing really well. In the program book, we would just go out and cold call record companies to advertise. And we called this one called Resistance Records, not knowing it was a white power label, white, actual Nazis, real Nazis, not what you call people you disagree with today. Modern, that word means nothing. But back then that meant something. Like when someone pronounced them as a Nazi, they meant business. And so we were like, oh, and they wanted to give us so much money. I was like, this is an incredible paycheck. And everyone on the paper that was white was like, don't do it. But the person that was doing my covers was a black man. And the main person that was writing for me was a Jewish professor at the DePaul University. And they both said to do it. Take the money. You don't want to make this a taboo. When it's a taboo, it's attractive. Just let them have their say. They're ignorant. I'm like, okay. And I did that. And like present day, I was interviewed by this professor, and he's going on about how it was wrong. It was wrong. Because he's doing this book on trying to make Satanism lumped into Nazis. And I'm like, who suggested I do that? Give Dina Weinstein a call. And I think he knew who Dina was. You mean who works at DePaul University? I go, yeah, give Dina Weinstein a call. She's the one who told me I should run it. And he's like, well, you shouldn't have. I'm like, well, you weren't working on the newspaper then. I guess had you had your say, maybe I wouldn't have. But that's how it went. And I was just involved. I was just wanting to take the money. At that time, when I listened back on that stuff, I just really laughed about a lot of that stuff. And it's unfortunate. I just didn't realize how bad a lot of people had it, worse than even poor white people. And so, you live and you learn. But I was still like this, just presenting stuff that was causing trouble and getting me attention. And Milwaukee Metal Fest was a big moment for me. I was well known, and a lot of stuff attracted to me there. And so it's a big moment in my life. And for Might is Right, that we were taught that's how we met. So it's essential in this whole story of Satanism, or my ties to Satanism.
Next up is Publishing Mike Diana.
Yeah, what a heartbreak. I did a lot for that guy. So that's in there just because I published obscene books, like to show that's in there. Hopefully someone can see it like they saw, oh God, I don't have the first anarchist book convention on that fucking list, I bet. That's got to be on there. I got to write that down. So Mike Diana juxtaposes anyone calling me a Nazi first. At least it did at the first anarchist book convention when hardcore anarchists surrounded my table because they knew I put out Might is Right. And they looked at everything I was selling at my vendor's table, and they saw the Mike Diana stuff. They saw this other stuff, and they're like, yeah, you couldn't be a Nazi. They'll kill you. And I go, yeah, right. And you know, they walked away, and they called me a nihilist. And I was like, okay. But I don't think I've ever been a nihilist either. I sort of just, you know, I'm not a nihilist. I just was ignorant to a lot of things. So that's why Mike's in there. Is, you know, it's a part of, but again, Mike, when you look at his work, he had a lot of racial stuff in there. And I think, I don't know if I take Mike as racist, but I don't know him that well anymore. But I know in order to deal with ills of society, you must speak these ills of society. And that's sort of an artist's job. And so we were pushing stuff forward, not as a political agenda. We weren't like looking to seize control of the Black Power movement or anything like that. We were just pushing out ugly things because ugly's all we saw. Mike was a poor person that grew up in a trailer park. So I related to Mike and his anger and his artwork. And they said he couldn't publish it. And I was like, yeah, fuck them. We're going to publish it. And they'll stop me and someone else will publish it. You can't, that's the illogical thing about censorship. You can't stop it. You can't stop information when people want that information. There's no way to stop it, which is a good thing. And I think it also shows that, you know, again, my intent is, it shows my intent. It's about the freedom to communicate and explore ideas.
Underground Comics Hall of Fame curator. What's that?
Oh, that was the best time. That was one of the best times of my life. Bucktown Pub. At that point, I did I was broken. You know, again, all this stuff came down to me. Run out of town. You know, shunned, or this stuff's happened multiple times in my life. So that Naked Aggression zine really struck a chord and caused a lot of problems. And then I'm living on a friend of mine's couch at his mom's house, and she's taking care of me. And that's when the Secret Service visited. But what was that part of again? I'm getting that was the Underground Comics Hall of Fame. And so they contacted me. A guy that ran Free Fest is like, hey, Shane, these guys are looking for an editor. They're old hippies. And they want someone to help them with their magazine. And I suggested you, because you're this counterculture legend in Chicago, and they're working with old counterculture legends, old ones. They're like in their 50s. Hi, I'm in my 50s. And so I went to their bar, and they're like, do you know who R. Crumb is? Do you know who this they're mentioning all these old counterculture people. I'm like, no, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. I don't care about them, actually. And they're like, why would we even hire, why would we work with you? You don't know anything about this culture. And I was about to lose the gig. And I was bold, and I was like, oh, yeah, old man? Do you know about Mike Diana? Do you know about Ace Backwards? Do you know about this? Do you know about that? And they were like, no. And I'm like, yeah, what makes you think I would want to take a job if you don't know about my culture, my shit? We're connected to that stuff, and it's under, and I was able to rant. And they were like, yeah, you're hired. Come on. We want you. You're great. And so I was able to do that. And it was like they inducted R. Crumb, the guy who did the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, Gilbert Shelton, Howard Cruz, one of the first gay cartoonists. So that's what the underground is. It's this counterculture. And that was what LaVey was a part of, is a counterculture, which is something that's against the status quo, turns our back on society and creates our own world. And within that world, there wasn't so much judgment because there wasn't any Nazis in there. There was not so much judgment, though we could have conversations about anything. And so that's why you would find the first, gay cartoonist and stuff like that within the underground. Now it's above ground.
Richard Ramirez giving you the phone number to the LaVeys.
Yeah, that was wild. Well, that's on there. That's on there. You're asking why it's on there. It's on there because was one of these moments I got. I had it and I didn't even use it. I didn't care about it too much until I started dating, and it became worth something. It became valuable, so I used it. I'm glad I did.
All right, next up is asking Anton to explain and republishing the book.
Yeah. Well, you're asking why it's on there. It's because that's what the book we're working on is about. So I think all this stuff is based on that book. But it's important in the timeline of things. And when LaVey passed away, and when I became friends with him. It's important for people who are members of the Church of Satan. It's important for other people. A lot of people like to discount it because he was old. They say he wasn't at his prime, but I didn't see that. It was brilliant. It was a great conversation. It was great hanging out with him and great talking to him and Blanche on the phone and stuff. And I had a fine friendship with him. So, but I did that boldly. I threatened him. I said, you can write the introduction or not. I'm going to publish this book with or without your permission, with or without your blessing. It's happening. And you have a chance to control the narrative. You have a chance to talk about it, or I'm going to talk about it. And of course, he wanted total control. Imagine that.
Okay, and next up is cover of Chicago Reader.
Yeah, that's when my legend became something different. I was an underground legend, and that's when underground boils above ground, it gets to what we're seeing with the Satanic Temple today. Really attacked and confused, and something, it becomes something else, something it wasn't. And that's what happened in my life. My legend became something it wasn't, and that's when I started to not be seen anymore. I was only seen as what people read or what they projected onto me. I was no longer a human being to a lot of people in Chicago. And the Chicago back in the day, this is pre-internet. So you have to think about this like newspapers. They're paper newspapers, right? They're stacked hundreds and thousands of high everywhere because these are free papers. The Reader was free. So anywhere you went in Chicago on you'd go there on a Thursday to look for the Reader to find out what was going on around town that week. And they were thick, and I'm on the cover of this thing, and it's everywhere in Chicago, like every fucking where in a major city. So what I realize is then I go out to dinner, and it was great this one time because I don't like my dad, right? And he comes to visit and he takes me out to dinner. And the waiter goes, I saw you on the cover of the Reader. I'm like, yeah, I almost chew my nails. And he's like, oh, this is on me. This is on me. So it was a big moment. It was cool. I remember being let in a blues club too. The guy, there was someone from out of town, and this guy goes, oh, dude, get the fuck in here. You big deal. Pushed me right in the door. We got front row seats at this blues club. It was the fucking best. It was the best. But it just became something different. I had long hair at the time, and I cut it all off because people would notice me too much. And I didn't want to be noticed like that. That's why I did Michael Hunt Publishing, because it was a pen name I could hide behind. And I appreciate pen names and being able to communicate anonymously when you're afraid. You should be able to employ those things, though there's no such thing as a satanic name. That's ridiculous.
Expo of the Extreme.
Well, Anton LaVey died, and the first one everyone came to celebrate his death, celebrate his life, I should say. And Boyd Rice was to perform there, and it's a big deal in that moment. It's a big deal in the counterculture that I'm a part of. The Expo Extreme was very influential. And I think putting these things on a timeline shows the influence. You're asking why they're on a timeline. Well, when I published Might is Right, if you go back in history, you'll see no one was doing it like it is today. So it shows my immense influence on the culture. And I don't say that, I do not say that lightly, and I don't even like talking about myself like that. But when I look at the timeline and look at the history of things, I'm like, oh, wow, I had an immense influence in these, impacted my culture in a huge way. And one was Might is Right is huge, right? You look at it online, there's 16 editions. It's everywhere. It's amazing. But if you look at my timeline, that wasn't there. If you look at the timeline for the Expo Extreme, there weren't events like that happening like mine. There was the Milwaukee Metal Fest that it grew out of, and festivals, metal festivals that idea grew out of. But mine had everything. It wasn't just metal. And like, I had porn stars there, and then I had like the Impotent Sea Snakes performing after Dark Funeral. So we had these black metal guys, first time black metals in the United States. And again, the first time the black metals in the United States, we bring it in for the Expo Extreme. Immense impact on the culture. And I helped with that. And so, like, you don't know that that's happening when you're doing it. But when I look back 20 years ago and look at black metal today, I'm like, yeah, I helped with this. I planted some seeds for this bitch. I want some of my fruit. I want some of my roses. And so it was a big deal. But I remember Dark Funeral they had to have ox blood, like real ox blood to smear on themselves, and pig heads, real pig heads. It was fucking great. And then after, I'm worried, like, because they're from, Scandinavia, and they're murder. The legend is they're murderous, and they're lighting shit on fire, and Mortis is there, and I'm worried what's going to happen when after them we have put a band that had trans, had gay folks on the stage, and they're flaunting their sexuality and stuff like that. And again, back then, it was different. That was outrageous. And especially, I'm juxtaposing these things. Black metal was something that's exactly the opposite of black metal, or is at least the legend of it. Like, gay people were murdered in Norway. A gay person was murdered in Norway from the drummer from Emperor. Mortis was in Emperor. So I'm putting these next to each other to cause this kind of conversation. Same as I did with Might is Right. I put Anton LaVey in the forward and a Nazi in the afterward, because they juxtaposed each other. They caused a fire. And I'm wondering what's going to happen. Like, the Impotent Sea Snakes are worried too. Like, are these guys going to attack us? And we don't know. And they're out there. The black metal guys are out there. Yeah, this is great, man. This is great. This is the fucking greatest show. We want to play this again. This is great. And so it was like what I got to, again, there was a great understanding of what my culture was about. And it wasn't about those legends of hating and stuff like that. It was about art. It was about that. Because one person killed a gay man in a park that was in a black metal band did not represent all of black metal. And so it was really cool. But it just shows my cultural influence, my impact on my multiple, and a lot of this, Claudia, when you ask this, a lot of that, now that I think about it, a lot of that's in there because it shows my cultural impact as one person and how many times I did this. And I think that's relevant when we talk about the Satanic Temple and the cultural influence that has had. Doug doesn't have any things in his canon like that. Kevin doesn't have anything like I have. I have had an immense impact on this culture. Yet I'm ostracized. I'm really fucking pissed off about it. I'm owed a lot from all of you. And I'm glad you two are cool. And that's how I see that. And I don't have a problem saying it, because I believe in giving credit where credit's due. And I'm giving myself fucking credit if no one else will. So that's a lot of why I'm putting that stuff in there too. The serial killer shit. I was doing that shit before anyone, and it wasn't like it isn't today. And I thought it was really gross when I started seeing stuff on TV that was like, had commercials in between these murders, and I'm like, they don't even show the real brutality of these crimes. They romanticize it. It looks sexy. And so all that was disturbing to me. But I was doing that shit again. I didn't go to look at serial killers to get, what the fuck is it called today? Whatever, popular. What the fuck ever you guys use the word. I forget what it is.
I think it's clout.
What is it? Clout. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't clout chasing. Right. Exactly. I was like, no, I was actually chained to a guy in a fucking van. He started talking about it. It was like, it was something that I can realize now was a trauma in my life, but I dealt with traumas through artwork. So everything that is informed is class informed and also trauma informed, like traumas were induced. And I'm like, I got to figure this shit out. So that's sort of what happened there.
All right, next on the list is meet with Peter H. Gilmore.
Over Thai food. Yeah, well, I was a big deal in Church of Satan because I was the last one brought in by Anton LaVey. No one can take that from me, can they? No matter what they want, they can't take it. And so, Peter wanted to meet with all of these people. And at the time, it was a lot of split. A lot of people were like, we don't like Peter and stuff like that. But because I was so new, I didn't really have any allies. I didn't really have allies in the Church of Satan. I was just like, it was cool, but I didn't even care. Like, I really did not give a fuck. And I still really don't. It's cool, though. It's really cool. It is, but, there's a lot cooler things. Blueberry pancakes are cooler. So it was important for me in my business. Like, I was the one, like, you see Baphy fucking shirts everywhere. Again, wasn't happening before I did it. It was happening on an underground level. And I went to LaVey and I'm like, hey, can I start selling this shit for, can I give you some money? And he's like, I want 10%. And I'm like, I'll give you 20. And he's like, what? That's what I would ask for. Old man, you're behind the times. You got to ask 20, bro. I'm talking to dude like that. Like, and that's not with disrespect. It's just that, you're young and dumb and culture. This is what's happening. And I'm from the street, so I'm talking street. So he's like, yeah. And so I would go around, like, people would sell those fucking Baphy shirts. I go in their stores, pull them off the rack and go, those are mine now. You're going to give 20% to us or else. So I was like an enforcer taking the shit. So meeting with Peter was part of just continuing my business. Going to Peter and going, hey. And he's like, so what was your deal with LaVey? What do you think I said? 10%. So I would, that was the deal with Peter. I would turn over 10% to him. And it kept everything going. I was selling shit. And so it was like a business meeting. You go and meet. That's what you do with business. You meet with people. And that was part of it. It was a cool conversation, cool meal in Hell's Kitchen in New York, and had some Thai food. And I would talk to Peter quite often on the phone about situations and stuff like that. Because again, I was part of the top tier. It's important. You're asking why it's in the timeline. We're doing a book on Satan. It should show that, Doug didn't really have any ties to Satanism like I did. And it shows where his authority comes from. And it shows who gave that authority to me, which is Anton LaVey and Peter Gilmore. And those are people I worked with. Doug worked with me. Peter did not like Doug. And Peter met Doug with me. Doug was my date to a diner cafe. One time I met Peter and Doug went with. And Peter didn't like him. No one in the COS liked him. They smelled a rat. Probably, but I jumped him in, so that's what happened. And I don't regret that.
Next up is the Angry White Male Tour. Why is this on here, and why is it significant?
Why is it on there? It can't because motherfuckers use it against me on Wikipedia. It's like outrageous that's a thing. Like, and they know those words alone are going to shock people. It's like, get the fuck out of here, and they don't want to use Satanism because that's way more shocking than angry white male. In America, Satanists are hated. Like, this is a Christian conservative country. And so it's like, someone's doing that to control the narrative. It's not about journalism. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal. The Angry White Male Tour, we got headlines. We were in Spin magazine. It's important for me to tell my truth, flaws and all. So I don't mind putting my timeline on there and doing what we did. But that tour was, again, done by artists. We weren't politicians. And that was a buzzword that was happening back then, like the angry white male. And I'm like, I'm an angry white male. You know, it didn't have the same political connotations it does today. And it's, you know, but again, like when you look at the Proud Boys, you look at stuff like that, a lot of that comes out of that kind of movement. The Jim Goad, you know, I took him on tour. So a lot of that, the Proud Boys are created, they're angry white males. And that's created out of that moment where the guy from Vice sort of harvested that Jim Goad angry white male. Jim was talking about rednecks in a book. And he's talking about how white culture, poor people, has it just as bad as black people, or would compare it. And I think he has a lot of really smart points when he talks about that. But he's coming from a perspective where we were in this white bubble. We couldn't see it. We didn't have the internet. And you definitely have to consider that when people are making judgments on these things. Historians will, maybe younger people won't. But they will look at that and go, yeah, they didn't have the information. We didn't have it. And I don't know about Jim. He was a college-educated guy, so he may have had that information and may have used it to his advantage, which I suspect. I always suspected him as a culture vulture, because when he did his zines, Answer Me, he was co-opting zine culture, but they were beautiful zines. Like his Answer Me's were beautiful. They were laid out perfect. They read perfect, unlike a zine. Zines are ugly, typo-filled, all that shit. So Jim was sort of co-opting cultures and working that to get a career. So I do consider Goat a culture vulture. But our Angry White Male tour was, I did that to sell books. We were selling books and trinkets and stuff like that. So there it is. Oh, God, I got to put Might Is Right on the Christian Crusade tour. Satanic Crusades. And that was a tour. It was a Dark Funeral, Satanic Crusade, same time as the Expo Extreme. And that was a black metal tour that tried to go around the United States, and they took Might Is Right on tour with them, my book, my publishing of it. And that helped spread that fucking thing big. That spread the word of Might Is Right. Whew, is what you see today. That tour there gave it a legitimacy that caught things 10,000 fires.
Might Is Right special.
Well, it's on there because here we are. You know, yeah, you know, I'm glad. I think I've said this repetitively. I'm glad that people have come at that to a degree. I mean, I'm glad individuals came at that. The groups that are coming at that and wielding that audio, they're doing it for the same reason we did it, to get attention and to have some sort of say, to be seen, to have some power, to climb. So they're no different than us. They just have different t-shirt on. But I appreciate when y'all came to me, or Nannerl came to me, and other people came to me, even assholes that would call me names. I appreciated that because I don't mind. I'm all about creating a conversation and having it. That's why I did what I did. And I learned a lot from that stuff. And it wasn't until after your Might Is Right special, the Infernal Church's Might Is Right special that you did, when I was like, that inspired me to really look into this more. And that's when I did one with Avi. And then I looked at the text of that 24-hour show, that original Might Is Right show. I was like, wow, this is motherfucking ugly. Wow, we really did it. We really, we went in there to be offensive, and it's offensive to this day, even more so. And it was offensive back then, but it's grown, and people's critique is apt. Most critiques on that is apt, you know. But again, we're artists. I am an artist, and I present ugly truths in order to have these conversations. That's sort of my job. You know, unlike like I said, in the timeline, you look at how these paths crossed and went away. The timeline should also show that Doug went to Harvard to weaponize a lot of that kind of stuff and be political and gain a different kind of power, and a power over people, which is the antithesis of Satanism as far as a Satanist would go. Him doing that is very satanic, but anyone joining it going, we're Satanists, that's not really what you want to be doing, you know, being controlled by someone or being pushed around politically by someone. LaVey was about freedom. Freedom. And I think with those paths, you see, one of us, people chase gold, people chase fame, people chase a lot of things in their life, and it shows in their intent from the youngest age in that timeline to the end. One of us chased pleasure, one of us chased power, and one of us chased freedom. I think one of us saw pleasure as freedom, and it's a vice just like anything else I see it as. I chased freedom. I give you the choice on who picked what on the other one. But it's interesting nonetheless, what we chased.
3-ring radio.
One of the best times of my life. It was a great time. I was invited to do internet radio by Radio Free Satan when they started, and it took me a year to say yes. I thought about it, I looked into it, and I didn't want to do something that was stupid. I didn't want to do something that was like ham radio. I looked into the internet, I was like, huh. And Rich and Honey, they started Radio Free Satan. And they really kept talking me into it. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it because I have this book coming out and I need to sell it. So I want to do a 24-hour radio show on there and see how it goes. And we had such a blast on that show. And I think you all might relate. So part of the blast is the feedback you're getting from your friends, or people that you're meeting online. They're like talking to you about what's going on. You're seeing, you're involved in the conversation like you never were before. And it's really neat. And so 3-ring radio was really cool, and it was just an evolution of zines to me. I was printing zines, and I knew the digital world was taking off, and I wanted to be the first one there. I wanted to be the lead, and I was. And it was great. It was really cool. I was addicted to doing that show for a long time until I got run out of a town one too many times, and it sort of broke me in a way that hasn't really come back. I don't think it will ever.
Next up, Cooking with a Serial Killer, Dorothea Puente. Why is this on here?
Well, I don't, maybe it doesn't fit, but I think, flaws in all, people have an issue with serial killers, people putting out books. But it's a important part of my life. It's a big deal. It still is a big deal to this day. That book still sells. And for me, that moment was vital to me because I was refusing to do stuff on Richard Ramirez or men serial killers. I'm like, we need to give women their due. And, I only want to do women serial killers. And again, my mom's probably a serial killer. So the women in my life are probably all serial killers. So it's also just another artist thing showing. It's just about showing me, showing things, like that timeline again is like an artist event for me too. It's like me showing myself. And artists often present themselves naked to the world, but that doesn't help people see us. Historians see that, but people, when you're alive, a lot of times don't see it. They see what they want.
A Christmas Story Fest.
Oh, that's on there to show my diversity. And that's something that got me run out of a town. I was right. I wrote about that in the introduction to this book. It's like, that was incredible. I had to sign contracts the day before saying we wouldn't let Satan into the event or Satanism. And I was like, yeah, why would I? It's a Christmas story thing. What does Satan have to do with that? Like, it's, why would you do that? Why would I do that? And this just happened with the Witches' Sabbath. We were supposed to do it in Brooklyn. I don't even think that's going to happen now because this person's gone. Once you say Satan or Satanism to people, their imagination goes wild, which is beautiful. But when their professionalism is trumped by their imagination, it blows my mind. They start imagining sex orgies and fucking smashed things and at fires and whoa, please, I don't know. Oof. So, yeah, that's it.
Process Church and Timothy Wiley.
Oh, that again shows my tie into that stuff, or my research. I wish I want to put that on the 3-ring. Oh, that's part the Timothy Wiley stuff is on there twice, and one of them is the 3-ring radio. Well, it's because I reached out to him first. Like it shows Doug's fucking lameness. Like he's following my shit. And you know, me reaching out to Timothy Wiley in the Process Church, I would say that was both of our interests, you know, but I found those people and I was reaching out to him to do interviews and stuff like that. So it just shows my involvement. And a lot of that is about showing that Doug and the Satanic Temple are really bold-faced liars. And I guess you could say, who cares? People lie, but why are they lying about that stuff? Why are they so desperate to take credit for like some of the most minor things? You know, it's like, it's really pathetic. I think I don't even understand the marketing behind that. I don't understand how that works. And I see them again, like I did when I was working with them, as really behind the times and not understanding what's going on today, only understanding what they know from their youth or what happened when they were younger. But I you know, like I see this timeline as justice. You can see the truth in the timeline, you know, and they're trying to rewrite a timeline constantly, you know, rewrite their creation myth. So yeah, Timothy Wiley was a cool guy. You know, I appreciate going hanging out with him at his house, and I appreciate anyone that gives me their time and lets me document them and you know, communicates to me honestly. And Timothy was an honest person, but he suffered a lot of traumas, and at the time, you know, I can see an old man with a lot of traumas and a lot of twitches because of all he'd been through, and I relate to that now.
Can you give like a brief overview of what the Process Church was?
Scientology on crack or on speed or whatever. Just Scientology times a million. You know, Scientology to build an army. You know, but you know, a vicious army. You know, that's the best. You know, I'm not sure Scientology has a hate for humanity within it, but Process Church did, and so that's the difference.
Yeah, they've definitely made sure to steer clear of the Process Church. I've prank called them before about it.
Who?
Um, the Church of Scientology.
Oh, have you ever called the Best Friends Network?
No, I have not.
That's an animal shelter in Utah. That's where the
Yeah,
Process Church is.
Marianne.
Yeah, that's where it is today. And you know, wild. And all that shit's wild. You know, I'm interested in occult stuff. I'm interested in people manipulate people. And I think, you know, now it comes out of it, maybe I was studying my mother. She's like a fucking manipulative cult leader, you know, narcissistic, you know, gaslighting constantly. So it's like maybe that's what I was basically trying to understand. Who knows?
Okay, next up, True Crime Warped Minds Tour.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure why it's on the list besides me taking Doug on that a couple times. I think we did two. He did two with me. It's hard for me to remember exactly what he did with that. You know, so it was an interesting moment. And it was a moment that also, that's one of these moments that we use. The Secret Service stopped us. The Secret Service stopped us. And that Secret Service stuff comes all the way from Naked Aggression. When I did an interview with G.G. Allen, he had a song about hurting the president. And I published a review of that in Naked Aggression. And the Secret Service actually did visit me as a young man. And it was a trauma-filled experience. And so that carried throughout my life, is like, let's use that. It was fucking horrific. And, you know, like, let's use it. So I was late. I was late for the first show at the True Crime Warped Mind Tour by 8 hours. I missed the whole show. I ended up at the end with the van full of people that was supposed to be there. And Doug had to do the whole fucking thing with the serial killer guy that was there. Some guy who participated in murders. And, you know, we just used the Secret Service. They stopped us because of Doug's shirt, because it had some, I forget, someone getting shot. Maybe it was George Bush or one of the Supreme Court justices. But, you know, those things are about me. You know, they're on the timeline to show, again, my impact on culture and my history within this counterculture, you know, dark culture. Shows my studies. It's my CV. So when people like these motherfuckers say, I don't know what I'm talking about, they can look at this timeline and see how long I've studied this and see sort of, yeah, I sort of do know what I'm talking about for this stuff. I don't know much else. I really don't know much else but artwork and dark arts and counterculture shit. I know how to cook focaccia. I know how to cook Italian food.
Ely soda.
It was a good soda pop. People loved it. You know, why is it on there? It's another time that I got run out of a town because of who I was, because I was living my joy. Both me and my partner. Though I don't think either of us wanted to be there. We still made the best of it. And we're picked on for doing that. And in a just world, I would be able to have gotten justice. I would be able to employ a lawyer, or someone would have helped me with that. I could have sued them 10 different ways. And I remember, like with Ely Soda, when that was happening, I was friends with Doug, and he was involved in Harvard enough to have enough friends there. And he was like, you need lawyers. They're all, here's all these, and this is the thing, and part of what led into a Satanic Temple conversations with him later on. But he was like, you know, all the lawyers here are looking for a case that has headlines so they can make a name for themselves. This is what they all drool over. I can find someone that'll help you with this. So we started to talk about that. But being a poor person, you're trying to make rent every month. You know, it's hard to sit back and go, yeah, let me have a call with the lawyer 6 times before we figure out if they'll do anything. I had to do something about it right now. And so I'm like, you know, I'm going to make a mockery of this. I'm going to make a book and film. I'm going to go around the country, use social media to tell everyone about this story in a creative way. And I'm going to create a satanic curse when I go around the country, and I'm going to hope to fucking rip this place apart. I'm going to hope the country falls to pieces after this fucking ritual. And I have a piece of artwork that I did, but, you know, partner participated a bit, where it has Satan, the great Satan, ripping open America, and it's ripped down in the middle. And I drew that up before we did the event, and I said, this is what I want. I want America ripped in shreds. You know, I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I sure hope it does.
Well, empires typically last 250 years, and America is on 246, so you may just be right.
Yeah, well, that's part of the trick too, right? When you're doing curses and stuff, you sort of like leverage your shit. Like, I'm pretty sure this is happening. I'm going to take credit for it right now and just say I'm doing a curse to rip apart America. But our book also, we went around and called it Politics, Art, Religion, Revolution. So we went around and asked people, do you see a revolution happening? Because back then it was that conversation started to happen in bars and stuff like that, and it had never been, that conversation had never been. It was after the Patriot Act was implemented after 9/11, where people really were upset about government's overreach. And the Patriot Act means, like, and people don't, you know, it was first the RICO law, where it was unconstitutional, then the Patriot Act. And the Patriot Act lets, like, literally, if I leave my house, they can come in here and grab my computer, you know, grab shit off my computer. And right now they can download shit off my computer legally because of the Patriot Act. They don't need warrants. So, you know, we used to have protections when it was just mail. No one can open your mail legally. If someone like your parents opened up a piece of mail for you, you could have them arrested. Your mail was that sacred. I'm sorry you don't have that. And that's why I'm so upset by the lack of those kind of freedoms, because I had them once. Looks like I had a lot more hair.
All right. Next up is art that kills.
What can I say? Maybe I'm just putting that in there for a brag. Got a whole chapter in a book. What other ditch digger got that? This one. This one. It's a proud moment. I'm proud to be a part of the aesthetic terrorism movement. You're going to terrorize us, we're going to terrorize you. And we did it with artwork. We did it perfectly legal and reasonably. Even though we're held to a standard of criminals, most of us that were part of that, we didn't do anything criminal. But we certainly had an impact on culture. All of us. And that includes Boyd Rice and the rest of them. And LeVay's in that book as well. We had a huge impact on culture. And what was that impact? To think for yourself. to enjoy yourself, to be yourself, to not take shit from people. Yeah, that's something I'm proud of. Fucking right.
666 Eve in LA.
It's because it's on the timeline because it's satanic, because it's a great satanic event, great ritual. I'm very proud of that event. The photos are great. It was fun. Cake and boobies. That's what it was. It was really great time. And my event was the best. My event is legendary. While Stanton had a stadium with Danzig and all, and a wedding there, doesn't hold up to the legend of 666 Eve. You know, I did mine at a sushi place called Zen Sushi. They had a couple stages. And it was like in Silver Lake, people like, no one's ever going to show up there. We had people around the block that showed up. Famous people, you know, John Five, all these fucking people were there. And it was great. They were filming films there of an adult nature. That was just really a great time. Women with, you know, fake blood on. I guess bragging. It shows.
I recommend it.
Again, it shows what was again, if you're looking at this timeline, we're talking about timeline and not myself. It's to show while Doug has his nose in a book in Harvard, I'm doing the deal. I'm there. I'm pushing forward the culture he eventually culture vultures. Me, Peter Gilmore's in LA, Stanton's doing his thing. All the Satanists were in LA on 666 Eve. We all decided to go there, and we're pushing the culture forward. So I'm not just saying me, all of us were there pushing it forward, pushing it in people's face. We saw a moment where we're like, oh, it's June 6, 2006. Let's do this. Let's get headlines for Satanism. As a satanic artist, there's not galleries that put satanic artists in there. There's not museums of that sort. People see it now as like clout chasing. Then it was like death chasing, like legitimate, like you're going to be shunned, run out of towns like I was. So we were pushing back as hard as we could against the forces of this Christian conservative society. And we did really well then. All of us did. You know, we all had different events. I'm not, you know, I'm just saying mine turned out and it's something that spoke of in LA to this day amongst a lot of people. I'm just sort of teasing I did the best. But we all did really well. And we all did something uniquely different that complemented each other. You know, and the Church of Satan event was cool. My event was cool, and Stanton's was cool. They were cool, like real cool. Not like anything you see in a Satanic temple, which is uncool.
Yeah, I recommend people go out and find that on Internet Archive. It's an amazing thing to watch.
Good. I'm glad it holds up. I think so. I think it was great. It was a really cool time. I'm proud of it. It's on the timeline because not only am I proud of it, but it shows my involvement in satanic culture, you know, and you know what I was, and I'm not saying, you know, a person going to school is not satanic. It is, but I was up to my elbows in actually doing that. Doug wasn't involved in that, you know, he was not involved, and you know, I don't know what it shows. You tell me.
I'm not sure what it shows either.
Yeah.
But next up says Doug goes to Harvard.
Yeah. Well, that's just part of the timeline. I don't know. It's on there because that's what the book is about. You know, it talks about me and Doug and how we work together. How, you know, like I said, it's like these roads intertwine and go apart. And that's sort of what it shows more than anything. It's not even a judgment. Like when I'm starting to go, he's in school with his nose in a book. That's fine. That's cool, actually. But it just shows where the interest went, like how things went and who we are, what our intent was. You know, my intent, it's when I think about what you're saying, my intent was more pleasures of the flesh, more carnal. Um, it was a different thing. You know, it's just different. It's extremely different. And I think that has a lot to do with people's pain over that 24-hour show, where there's a person that is educating themselves on this on eugenics and other things. It's not you know, it's a different thing. And I think people with a high education that are racial or studying that stuff are a little different, should be judged a little differently than poor people that are ignorant to those things. And so, you know, a lot of times that's what I'm trying to point out, maybe, is that, you know, I'm definitely an artist. And those events, 666 Eve, it's an art event. It was fun. There's not a lot of politics to a lot of my, you know, you don't see this recurring theme of eugenics, racism, control. I'm not looking to control people. So it just shows who I am more than anything, the satanic being that I am.
Next up, run out of town again.
I don't know which one is that. Oh, yeah, that's Ely. Yeah, that was just Ely being run out of town in the middle of the night. It was harsh. I lost everything. And then went back there after my stepfather dies and see my shit in stores as trophies. And that's a lot of people collect trophies now when I get run out of a town. They'll put something up. This guy's, you know, so it's real great. But again, love me or hate me, I'm still on your fucking mind.
Club Satan.
Well, it was a film I went to do because that's what options I had when I was being run out of town. That's the offer I had. Come and make films for us. And I was like, only if I could do mine, what I want. So I did that. And that was, you know, something I did for revenge. So when the people of Ely would ask, what happened to the soda and the soda guy? It would have a huge exclamation point that he got run out of town and this is what he made for us. A little different than soda pop.
Maybe I'll go see what they think of you still. Anyway, second meeting with Peter.
I forget even. I think that was with Doug. Maybe Doug was there with me. Maybe that was on a true crime mime tour. And we're heading up to Boston. Do I even have the Boston fucking true crime mime tour on that fucking list? That's a long list. It's just on there because he's Peter and it's this satanic stuff. There was no real big conversation about the future of Satanism. Oh, it probably was, but nothing I'm gonna, remember, too specific. It was a cool diner.
A year at the wheel.
Yeah, well, that's this also shows the progression. A lot of these things show the progression of that 24-hour show that people have in their head and is online and is a big deal in the world of Satanism. That's the progression of it. That's where our podcast went. That's where my podcast went. That's where my exploration went. And it was at that moment we're being run out of Ely, and I was like, this is almost like a satanic pilgrimage. We're going to go test this. And I remember joking to my ex-partner, because I'm always the one to talk and people listen, and which I don't necessarily like. But I was like, this is the chance I get to just listen to people and film them and hear other opinions and really test what we think we believe, what we think we know. And, you know, in your 20s and, you know, you think you know everything. We're early 30s, I think then, maybe mid 30s. At that point, I'm struggling with philosophical beliefs, trying to understand what the fuck's going on. And that's how I get my education. I went and interviewed people. I went and asked questions. I didn't get to go to school, so I did that. And so that was my study. And, you know, that trip made me a better person. That trip was great. It made me see people differently. I didn't hate the whole of humanity anymore. I used to just hate people across the board and have just a want to see everything burn. And that trip changed everything for me. It was really cool. It was really cool. But it was me taking Satanism on the road and staying with people that were of different faiths, different ideas, and challenging them and them challenging me on like atheism and stuff like that. So it was cool. I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot from all those people. I learned a lot. And it's ironic because when I look at that, it starts at Fred Hampton's house, Black Panther, and people go on, you know, they go on about this 24-hour show, but they don't go on about that. They don't go on about that road trip. That is a very diverse road trip, and it has nothing to do with racism. Nothing at all. So it again shows my intent, shows my partner's intent, and where we went with things. Now, I have no idea what my partner or Doug do too much today. You know, I don't pay attention to them too much. But that's what I know in that moment.
Next up is Doug visiting Timothy Wiley and his Mother's Day blog.
Well, again, it just shows his intent and where he's going, his focus of things. Him visiting Timothy Wiley's on there probably because he did it after I did. Oh, yeah, I remember, as a matter of fact, I think I write in the cards that he was talking to me throughout my year at the wheel trip. You know, he would call and ask questions about what we were seeing and stuff like that. And sort of, you know, like we talk as friends. And I told him, oh, we're going to go. We have an appointment to see Timothy Wiley. We have a meeting. He's going to meet with us. And so Doug gathered up William Morrison and went out there. And I think Adam Parfrey was out there with him too. And I didn't know anything about this. You know, it was happened behind my back. And when I got to see Timothy Wiley, he said he'd met Doug and had nothing good to say about Doug, you know, and which I thought was funny, you know, as it goes with the tattoo on his arm and everything. And so that's why it's in there, you know, just to show he did it after me, like everything else.
Okay, and the Mother's Day blog.
Well, you sent that to me, and I put it on there because it's, I think, relevant to, you would have to, his eugenics policies or something that it conflicts with something he said in the Satanic Temple moment. It's a conflict of interest or a conflict of what he's saying versus what he's doing. And that's why I remember putting it on there. Again, that timeline hasn't been edited down. It's, you know, I'm just throwing stuff on there right now. But that's what I remember why I put that on there.
Dark Arts, a look at uncompromising and controversial works of 5 artists. What's that?
Well, that was when I wish that was come out. I debated Doug a bit. We did this. He was, you know, I was invited to do this mass art event, dark art event with him and William. And I did it as a favor. And I didn't go, as a matter of fact. I decided not to go. And Dave Archer went. And it was a cool event, but I remember you know, like at some point Doug tried to, like happens always, people want to get trump me somehow. They want to argue with me out of nowhere. I didn't know we were going to have a debate. And Doug started, you know, like on the mic while we're live, and he's on stage said something about ritual. Asked me about ritual, if I believed in ritual or something like that. He was coming at attacking Dave Archer, Stephen Labe, and myself because we had like satanic. We weren't scientists. And he asked me about ritual, and he was sort of making a joke about it. And I said, well, I don't see. I think ritual is the word is tied into habitual. And I would say that you practice rituals every day. And he goes, oh, well, I don't do rituals. I would never do a ritual. I go, you go to have a tea every day at this tea shop, and you get lapsang souchong every day with a little bit of milk in it, a splash of milk. I was hung out with you at Harvard twice, and you did this every morning. It was a ritual, whether you want to admit it or not. And he goes, no, it was just me getting tea. I'm like, yeah, okay. How do you argue that? It was just me getting tea. It's a habit. It's a ritual. And that's what rituals are. They're habits, habitual things that you do that make you feel better. They're not just like a satanic ritual. Those are based off of probably habitual experiences, or theatrics, fun stuff to do theatrically. But real rituals exist, like brushing teeth. It becomes a ritual. A lot of people, like with meditation, a lot of Satanists go to Buddhism, and it would be the same kind of concept of feel the water running on your hands, as you're washing dishes. It's a habitual thing you have to do, but you're getting into the zen of it. The water's running over your hands. You feel the water. You think about the ocean. Those kind of things. That's what a real ritual is. Beyond the theatrics of it is how you can get control of your mind to focus it in such. You stare in the candle. You stare at the flame. You stare at the flame until it's about meditation. It's about achieving a clarity of mind. That's what rituals are. So you could use, and of course, going to get a cup of tea to get your thought on is a ritual because you're trying to clear your mind, get your head ready for the day. And, maybe brushing teeth doesn't become a ritual for everyone, but some people do go, okay, I'm going to, or people will say, some of my best thoughts are in the shower. That's because it's a ritual. And you got a clear mind. That's why that is.
This is mania.
Just shows what I do. Just shows, like again, intent. Shows all I've done.
The book about Asperger's.
What is that? Oh, well, that's in there to show, like, people were seeing stuff. I was thinking different before I saw it. Like, it's in a New York Times bestseller. I'm in the front page of this New York Times bestseller about a kid with Asperger's that is able to connect dots and figure things out. And this author, Jody, I forget her, I can't pronounce her name, but she's in the serial killers, and most likely she understands the Church of Satan, all that stuff. So she had asked me a bunch of questions and on the true crime board, and I was able to put a bunch of dots together that other people weren't. And that's where that came from. And so usually when I see inconsistencies in things and I'm really bothered by them, there's something there. I can't always put it into words. And a lot of times it sounds crazy. And especially with like the Satanic Temple stuff or Queer Satanic, it sounds paranoid. But it usually works out to my advantage that it's true. Or there's like with this clip that you sent me yesterday with the Queer Satanic talking about Shane made this laughable statement about Doug going to Italy, and then lo and behold, it was found out to be true. That's sort of the history of my life. I say things, I'm like, this doesn't add up. There's something wrong here. And I'm laughed at, called crazy, yada, yada, yada. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's true. Yeah, I thought so.
Next up is Center for Healing Spiritual and Cultic Abuse.
Well, it has to do with Doug, me working together, and the start of what eventually became the Satanic Temple. That's I shouldn't say the start of it, but that's part of a lineage where Doug was looking to create something in religious sections, control, assigned top. It was this idea of getting a large swath of people to follow his ideas. And that was part of that. It failed. But that was the first time he asked me to be a part of something like that. Was maybe the first time. The pirate convention was one of those events too. But Doug kept coming to me asking. It shows in our lineage, in this timeline, that shows that Doug continued to come to me and ask me for help for him to gain some legitimacy in school. He needed to stand out, and I was the only person he could use that would pay attention to him. No one at his school did, and no one in our culture did. I did. I believed in him, like I do every artist I work with. And I think that's what it shows. And so it shows that, like, when he says, Shane's just that guy I talked to once about making bumper stickers for the Satanic Temple. Yeah, that's not true.
What the fuck fest?
Shows my what do you say? Street cred. Shows what I do, and I'm working with John Sinclair, White Panther, original, revolutionary, a guy who coined the phrase punk rock. So, that's what it shows. It shows, like, again, he had respect for me because of my street cred, and I had for him, and he worked with me, and lovely Ruby LaRocca was there with me. It was a great time. Of course, that was after Ruby hung herself, so she can't really talk anymore. So it wasn't the same. Ruby's such a smart woman. I don't know how she's doing anymore. But to know she was just a genius. So I was always loving to hang out with Ruby. Anyway, it shows that. So it's cultural street cred. Just like the emails in 2010 when Doug asked me to come to LA to talk with Skinny Puppy with him because they wanted to meet me, not him. And he kept, like they were interested in the Church of Satan stuff and all that. And I was his in. It was the same thing with the pirate, with the anarchist at the pirate convention. It was the same as I was the in for him at the cult awareness network. I was the in. He's like, well, I got this Satanist guy. He was a friend of Anton LaVey. That opens doors. That opens a lot of fucking doors. It closes a lot of doors too.
Next up is A Year at the Wheel Publishing.
Whoa, triumphant moment. We got a book out. Took years to put that book out. So it just shows I've never been inactive in my culture. When I started recently talking about this, last handful of years talking about the Satanic Temple, people, where have you been? What happened? Where'd you go? I don't know. I've been doing other things like a Satanist would. I did a book and movie. Have you seen it? Because it's great. I had a better version, a better edit, and I was talked down from my ex, and I hate her for that. And I wish I get my hard drives, but I doubt I will. And the actual edit's really fucking good. My edit is really great. But whatever, it's a collab, and it was a good one. It was a great one. I'm really happy with that work. It's one of my proudest works. But again, just shows my activity, how prolific I am. It shows in that timeline. It shows like you right now. Y'all have van culture, van life, all this shit online. Hello, there was no one doing that before me and my wife. Me and my ex. Same as podcasting. That's what this timeline shows. When you look at the timeline, historian will look at it, they're like, oh, dude was doing some of the first podcasts. Dude was doing some of the, yeah, that's me. So how I'm looked at today by Satanic Temple people and stuff, like, oh, you fucking goofy motherfuckers. Everything you're standing on is from me and a handful of my friends. Very few people. But it wasn't Doug. He's a culture vulture. And I think that's what this shows more than anything. I hope.
The Pirate Party Convention.
Well, just another event that Doogie asked me to do, that I did. It shows his ties to anarchists. It shows the ties to some of those people. They're in the Boston area, and they're tied into Pacific Northwest people. There's an anarchist network that stuff ties into that is on another timeline that is really interesting. It's a really interesting tie-in. And that's where, you know, that one would build more of a COINTELPRO kind of story. But for this one, it shows Doug's involvement with me and him continuing to ask me to do stuff so he could get his foot in the door with counterculture groups, so he could have legitimacy with these counterculture groups. Why did he want that legitimacy is what people should be asking.
The TST adopt a highway.
That's when I started consulting Doug in a large way, you know, when he failed at that. You know, I, of course, spoke with him throughout our years, ever since we knew each other. And a great deal of that was about making satanic lobbyist groups and how to leverage Satanism to our advantage and stuff like that. But that was a moment that they were failing, and he had to call me again. You know, that was another thing where he tried to do something, and he was like, I remember him calling me, trying to impress me with it. I'm like, yeah, great. Great, good for you. I'm happy you're doing that. Great news. And then it was failing. He's like, how can, what can we do? And I'm like, yeah, Doug, you're working with a rich guy. There's no fucking way I'm doing this for free. Like, I don't like rich people. So you got to pay for my advice. That's where that came from. You know, when it was me and Doug talking and hanging out, and he was this, whatever he was from Detroit, and I dealt with him because he was an individual. But once you get someone with money next to you asking for to use me for leverage, I was okay letting this artist that I was working with use me for leverage, but not a rich person. You know, they got to pay. Because I'm not doing it for the culture anymore. You see, rich people aren't part of my culture. Counterculture doesn't really have rich people. They may, but they're not assholes. They're looking to prop up a system that has betrayed humanity.
Next up, let's talk Satan.
What the fuck is that even? Oh, that fucking tour I did. Me exploiting myself. You know, and it was like right around the time we had started getting real about the Satanic Temple stuff. And I wanted to again put my foot down, and, you know, that stuff comes from me. And that's why I did that tour. But that's why that card's there, to say, like, I was very active within Satanism as this stuff, you know, as I am. As an artist, all my stuff would be considered satanic artwork or outsider art or whatever you want to call it. So
Creative class trumps ruling class.
hey, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to go potty. Just give me 2 minutes. We good?
Okay. Yep.
So you don't have to hear my piddle.
You know, I should probably take a break too.
Okay, creative class trumps ruling class just shows that I'm continuing to do it for the culture. And that was a great project I did. I asked a lot of artists about nature, nurture, culture vulturing. Can you steal an idea? So, you know, I love that. I love that project, and I hope to eventually turn it into a book. this year. What's next? You guys gone?
Okay, I am back.
Okay, let's go. I'm back too. What's next?
Awesome. I just had to grab a Dr. Pepper. Give me a second. What is next is creative class trumps ruling class.
Didn't we just say that?
I said the title, but we didn't get into it. We had to take a break.
Oh, I thought I said it was a great, I asked people about Nature Nurture. It's a website about artists, and it shows my foot in the cult, like I'm continually doing stuff for the culture, let's say. I'm continuously active in the culture. So it's not like I went off to be a dentist and I'm coming back to look for the reins and control of Satanism. I am an artist, and that's part of my CV to show my work. I'm judged. I should be judged on the body of my work. So the timeline is a lot of that, ultimately that too. Like, you can judge me on the one day of my life, or you could look at the body of my work and what was that site about? Do we talk about might is right? Do we talk about racial issues? Do I talk about eugenics? No. Do I talk about that in A Year at the Wheel book and movie? No. So that's what this is. That's what it shows. I think. I'm going to eat that tomato.
Your speech at Harvard?
Oof, train wreck. But that's why it's there, because I was working with Doug. Doug asked me to come out there, and it was, again, to give him legitimacy within Satanism. Before that, it was, I didn't want to be that involved. I said, well, get someone cheap like Zandora. And he did. And then convinced me to do something. And at the time, I don't know why I did it, but I did. And I found it was really important, though, on the way out there, that poor people really thought it was important. Please tell them about us. Tell us. And I was like, whoa, this is a big deal. So it was neat, but, ended up to be a train wreck. I didn't like what we did live. If that shows anything, it shows how little my partner did or carried any kind of weight in anything we ever did. Because I was hoping, at that point, you're hoping to have a person to back you up and not flounder. And, it was it wasn't the greatest. Lame.
Next up is the Baphomet statue.
Well, on a timeline to show what happened with this book. And again, it shows my influence, if anything. It shows you use influence, and I don't know how the timeline works out. I'm not looking at it in front of me, but it just shows that, and that it shows. It also would show the Hell Satan movie. Like how I'm not in that history, but that Baphy statue sure is. And that's a. I don't know why people aren't asking about that. I don't have the Rick Scott thing on there, do I? I need to add Rick Scott. Yeah. Next.
Internet Archive accepting your archive.
Brag. It's a brag. It's cool. I don't know. I think it's cool. Legitimacy. The legitimacy I give other people, they gave me.
All right. So Black Magic Art Show.
Shows my involvement in Satanism. Again, my involvement in the culture is nonstop.
Depression themed art show.
This shows I'm an artist, shows I'm a human being, shows what I do, my involvement in the culture. I think my story is relevant to the story. That's why it would be on that timeline. And I think Doug's story is relevant to the story. And that's why it would be on the timeline. It's not just a narration of what people want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about Satanism. They want to talk about what they think Satanism is, and pretty much most everyone's wrong. It's about showing the actual story, and that would have to do with human beings being involved in it and what their intent was, what they did in their life. If we're going to be out there on such a big international stage and being judged, that's why this stuff is on this timeline. Then judge me on my whole body of work. Please do. But if one more motherfucker takes it out of context and tries to weaponize it, they're going to find out the real wrath of fucking Khan.
Taking Might is Right off sale.
Just shows I was affected by what was going on. It was heavy. Trump being elected and all that stuff, and people interpreting it in a way that I'd ever interpreted it, and giving me credit for that interpretation was a little too much for me. Like, it was like, yeah, that's not me. That's not me. I didn't see the book that way. People see it that way, and I haven't really reapproached it to reanalyze it. I know it by heart. I just don't see it that way. So it just shows my struggle. And I didn't even know the 24-hour radio show no one was bothering me about that. I didn't take it off sale because of fear. I took it off sale because of the replies what was happening with Trump and this surge of ignorance. And so, a lot of times this stuff, pussies online get all up and thinking I'm a pussy. But I'm not. My whole career is I've lived my life in such an honest way, and I've said exactly what I think in very simple, direct terms. That it's like, yeah, I don't need to. I said this on Twitter the other day. I don't need to fucking dog whistle. Like that's you, not me. I'll say whatever I feel like, and if I were racist right now, I'd be racist. If I was into Might is Right, I'd be into that kind of theory. I would be saying this is the law. I don't think law of the claw applies anymore. I don't see it in a modern society. I do see it with poor people, and it's definitely a way you have to survive. It's a reflection of how the society treats poor people. They definitely have their thumb and their boot on their neck. So you want to be just the same. You want to apply might to that boot and pull it off your neck. But I don't see it as a religion or be all end all. I see it as a book, and it was taken like religion, and so I took it off sale because I don't want to be attached to religious minds, religious thinking, or religion at all. I would want to be attached to free thinking, free individuals, people who are chasing freedom, not power. There's no freedom in power.
Very, very anti-icon as explanation.
Very what?
Very anti-icon-esque explanation.
Okay. Anti-icon. I'm gonna have to think about that. But
It's
yeah,
the Ghostman album.
it's what?
It's the Ghostman album.
Okay, okay, great. I'm going to listen to that. But yeah, I am. I mean, so is LaVey, like anti-icon. Yeah. That's silly. That's why the Black House doesn't stand anymore. There's no memorials for LaVey. There's no statues because we all knew that was totally against what he was about. And yes, he had a very healthy fucking ego. So he didn't need a statue and he didn't want one. He had cake and boobies. Things that count.
Okay, next up, life-size presidential voodoo doll, traveling art show.
It just shows my involvement in the culture again, and I think that shows to the extent that I would be involved in politics. You know, if I have to analyze it a little bit, after Bernie Sanders was stolen from him, I was so pissed off. I wanted both those fucking people to be cursed. I voted for Democrats because that's what you do. You vote for poor people, and poor people vote for Democrats because they're the only ones that give them any food stamps, and which is not enough. So it just showed that my disdain for politics. Actually, it shows my disdain for politics. That's as political as I got. Stick a fucking pin in these fucking politicians and curse them. I certainly don't want to be one. And it just also shows my hype and all that kind of stuff. And I think actually I was talking about doing that, like that's one of these ideas that started way back when, like these statues or these voodoo dolls or these just to get headlines. And it was like one of these things that's where it morphed for me, and the Baphy statue morphed over that way. Sort of the same, it comes out of the same long artist type of conversation and thinking where, you see this branch again, this went this way and this went this way,
Okay, what is art? Q&A. What was that?
A live show that trying to just, again, talk about that creative class, Trump's ruling class website. It was just another me exploring what is art, what is what is free speech, me trying to have those conversations with people because they're exciting and they're never ending. And it's more of me at that point, it was more of me presenting education than gaining too much education. I was taking artists and interviewing them and asking them what is art so I could give that to people so they could think about that. I have my own theories as to what art is, but that was me having to do the same thing I've been trying to do all the time, is just create a conversation about things that I feel are important.
The evil that we live and the evil within. What is that?
A silly art show. I just saw, I did 2 art shows in one time. I did the guillotine art show across town in Portland, and then I knew I was leaving Portland. I knew I was leaving my ex. And so I wanted to do something big before I left. And so I did this guillotine art show, and then across town at the same time, same day, I had this opening at another place where it was just like trinket, like anything I did mass produce, pins, patches, things I would screen print. It wasn't original art. So it was like, that's all that was. Just a art show hustle.
The removal of the dysgenics.com website.
Well, that's on there because that's part of Doug's history. It's part of the comparison as to what's going on. I guess if I were to say anything, it's again him following my lead. I took out Might is Right. He takes down dysgenics.com. You know, why did he take it down? I know why I took mine down. Why did he take his down? It's not, I don't think it's an artistic feeling. You know, it's a political move. Mine was more of a, you're not interpreting this right. And I don't want to be involved with that. I don't want involvement with that. His is the exact opposite. I do want involvement with that, and this is going to hold me back.
Okay. The Joys of Satanism, not to be confused with the Nazi group Joy of Satan.
Funny, I never even knew that group existed when I did that too. Oof, what a bad mistake there. Almost. It's just a book I did, you know, I had to keep working to stay sane. I had to keep making artwork or publishing stuff, and I just left everything I love. It was probably going to be the worst moment of my life, ever, forever, that moment. So.
The Hail Satan documentary.
Yeah, I also did this book that I didn't have on the timeline. The tangible formula for love and loss, despair and joy, and the triumph and failure of the collective will, part 1. And so,
yeah, I read that. I recommend it to anyone listening.
I'm sorry that you did. I just, and this is so generous of me to share my sketchbook. That was a very generous, hard thing to share. But again, it goes back to me stuttering or whatever it is. As a kid, I always presented things like this is, and people were asking me what happened with why I left Portland and all that. And that's the first thing I put out. I just would hand that here, now go away, take that. And that's what it is. You know, I can't put it into words. So that's what that was. What was that other one now?
The Hail Satan documentary.
Yeah, it's on there because that's what we're talking about, the Satanic Temple and stuff like that. So it's on there to illustrate the timeline. You know, how this stuff is, what's going on in my life and what's going on there. You know, people ask enough questions about that they should be able to see that. I don't know how this timeline will read to other people, but I only put that on there for a factual thing. A lot of this to answer, I could answer them all like, it's just to help people make an informed decision.
Speak of the Devil podcast.
Same thing, informed decision. It's a good time. Glad it worked out, you know. It was nice. I'll tell you, the Speak of the Devil podcast was real important to me because at the time I knew people were trying to rewrite my history. I didn't know to what extent. At that point, I still hadn't really looked at what was going on with the 24-hour show or anything like that. But I knew my ex was trying to rewrite my history and everyone else. And it was like an attack on everyone's trying to own me, own my history, tell people what it's like I don't even fucking exist anymore. It only matters what everyone else says about me, not what I say. No one even fucking asked me a question about it. So this person comes to ask me questions. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. Let's do this. As long as it can be like, you know, I definitely want to tell my entire story and not just one fucking story about this fucking stupid group. So that's how that worked.
I can't pronounce this. IXNA ritual.
Ixnay. That's just something I did for their political plaque, Ixnay political PAC. It was a friend of mine that worked as an editor of Vice magazine, and his partner, and he asked me to do it, and that I could take political, you know, I could, you know, what was in it for me, and at that time it was hard for me to find any work, you know, anything like that. So I took I enjoyed doing that. It was cool. We filmed some rituals. It was fun. Got a bunch of witches together to curse Trump, curse fascism, I should say. I told them I'm not about cursing Trump or anything like that. And they thought I was pro-Trump right away. I'm like, just go to the root and curse fascism, you know.
Bugbee Fashion House?
You know, I want to make clothes. I want to play with fabric. And so that was just something, you know, I'd be a fashion house is someone who does everything from design, stitching, every single aspect of that work. And I didn't want to be known as a person who made patches or embroidered patches or enamel pins because I did so much more. And so, you know, I really wanted to make clothing. And I still think the fashion industry gets away with murder. So I was like, where can I fit in the world and be obscene? And I'm like, shit, the fashion industry plays with everything. Like Kanye does it. Like, it's great when I see his controversy because he did just what they expect in the fashion world. How do you get attention? So he does White Lives Matter. It's fucking great because of the attention he got. And that's what the fashion world does. Or they play with child pornography. You know, they put up stuff like looking very, you know, they really play with things, heroin chic. And so I was like, man, they'd appreciate my offensive artistic visions and stuff, maybe. So I'm looking to be appreciated somewhere. I thought the fashion world might do that.
The blood pact with Stanton LaVey?
Well, at that point, I had realized how awful things had gotten with the Satanic Temple and shit like that. And it was like the gloves were off. And I decided to do my due diligence and start figuring out what the fuck happened and how LaVey saw it. So I reached out to Stanton, and, you know, we had been frenemies for a long time. And it was just time that we met and buried the hatchet. And we had a good time. You know, I remember Walper just eating chocolate chip walnut cookies and banana milk, like chocolate milk, but it was banana milk. It's fucking great. And we're, you know, smoking up and having all this good time. And, you know, we made a blood pact to reform Satanism from what it became with what I helped start. And, you know, Stanton appreciated that I was trying to do something to fix what I had started. And so, you know, and I appreciated when Stanton was sober, I really appreciated his mind. He was a really sympathetic, left-wing, beautiful person with a big heart. But he'd been through a lot in his life, so you trigger him out and he would be a monster. Fucking straight up monster. Brutal. Like me too. I related to Stanton in so many ways. So I miss him. We became good friends and we talk a lot. And he was someone I could talk to and not feel weird. We had good laughs about stupid shit.
Next up is kind of part of that. Recording with Stanton.
Yeah, it was just that. It was that just show in this context. It's just showing my work, the work I'm doing, and the work that continues to be used by everyone in this culture without giving me a fucking dime or any credit, and worse, dragging my fucking name. Friend of Anton LaVey, Stanton LaVey, Carl LaVey. I go out and dig these answers, get all this shit together, and this is the appreciation I get. This is what, fuck, Jesus Christ. Hilarious. But I want my roses now, not in my death. I want them fucking now. And I'm going to, this is basically about people knowing that they owe me shit. Like, all of you motherfuckers owe me. That's right, all of you.
This one is very good. The Infernal Church Special.
Well, it was a big moment, you know. You got the Infernal Church, y'all came at me, and I don't do a lot of, you know, I get, people ask me to do these interviews a lot. And I usually only consider like big things or cool things. And you were cool. Y'all were cool. And it had the vibe of like old school Church of Satan stuff. So I'm like, I suspected you might be Satanists and not posers. And you were doing something bold and scary. I'm like, at that point, like I said, I realized the 24-hour show was like on fire and people wanted to kill people over it. And I was like, these motherfuckers are bold. Maybe they're tricking me. I'm going to go see. And it was cool, you know, and it inspired me to do the anniversary show and get together with Avi and do that. And that was a fluke too, because Stanton did some shit and Next thing I know, I'm working with Avi. So it was like I picked Avi. I was supposed to do that with Stanton. You know, I would have did that with Stanton actually, any of that stuff. And at that point, me and Stanton had a party in the ways because how he treated Avi. And Avi came in and it was cool. It was cool to relive it, and it was cool to be able to tell people in that forum, in that moment, 20 years later, what I saw when I look back. You know. And it was when I did your show, I didn't even fucking look. I didn't care. I didn't look back on the 24-hour show. I didn't look at I don't care. And then when I'm doing it with Avi, I'm like, yeah, you know, hey Avi, we got to talk. You know, when he's jumping in to do this, I'm like, you should listen to this stuff. It's heavy. I'm going to give you this link. I want you to read that. And he read it all, and he's like, this is ugly shit. And then I looked at it. I was like, really? And then I read it all, and I was like, holy shit. So that was the first time I'd looked back on that show. Since it happened, like I may have listened to parts of it here or there on accident, or I was listening to that 24-hour show, like heard a snippet of it because I was editing something or ran across it online, you know, on archive.org. But I had never looked back on that thing until then. I know some people are amazed by that because that's their whole fucking life, and that's their whole beef, and that's their whole understanding of me. You didn't look back on it to that? I'm like, yeah, no, it's one day in my life. My fucking God. It's not a concept even. It's just one day. There's a whole string of shit that happened with that event that, you know, that's what that I would consider the event anyway. So, yeah, it's a good time. It was good to meet y'all, you know, meet you guys and become friendly with you, you know. Gives me something positive to think about. Hope for the future. Haha, hope. Fuck.
And there you go. You just killed two birds with one stone. It that
Good.
that's all the timeline. And Baphy can come up with the criticisms now.
Let's hear it, baby.
All right. Sure. So let's
Let me
right.
chew.
Everyone ready?
Oh yeah, I'm ready.
So now we're going to move on to dig into behind these crystals.
Hey, Baphy, you're breaking up.
I am. Oh shit. Motherfucker. There we go.
Okay.
No. Am I good?
Yeah, so far so good.
So now we're going to jump into some common criticisms Shane gets for things he mentioned on the timeline. So let's start off with this one. Obviously, you were in the beginning and you saw this con group sort of grow up. And a lot of people criticize you for perhaps, associating yourself with it in the first place. I mean, obviously, you did notice shady things later on with Penny Lane pretty much admitting that the documentary covered stuff up. But even in the beginning, it seemed like you recognized there was a lot of shady stuff going on. So I guess I'll ask, why would you associate yourself with that?
With what now? What was the beginning of that?
Satanic Temple.
Why would I associate myself with it?
Yeah, in the beginning. Why would you work with their early stunts?
Oh, you mean before Penny Lane came along?
Yeah, before Penny Lane came along.
Yeah, well, because I had a long friendship with Doug. You know, a friend calls and asks you to do stuff, you sort of consider it, you know? We worked together and plotted together. I enjoyed Doug's company. I enjoyed the conversations we would have. But that's all they were. They weren't a political organization. They weren't actions. They were just concepts or thoughts or stuff like that. You know, I'm in business, so I entertain calls from people all the time that I'm not necessarily friends with, but I'm going to work with them or maybe not. I don't need to like someone to work with them. I think it's if someone's looking at that, like, you know, we were, you know, they're looking at it in some sort of friendship way or how they deal with things at Walmart or, you know, in high school or whatever else. It's at some point, I can only communicate to business people with that kind of concept because it's like business people understand you don't have to like who you're working with. You just sort of work with people and see if there's an opportunity to make money or advance your career. And so that's why I would be talking to someone that's going to Harvard because it's going to possibly advance my career or my business. You know, it's not a real, I don't think you have to think too much about the idea that one of the most powerful schools in the world might turn out some opportunity for you because you got a contact there. And as a businessman and an artist, I have to look for opportunities because I didn't go get employed by someone that can just give me a check and I just have to show up for work. Those are easy things. And I would ask people why they do that. Why did they do that? Why did they take the easy road? I don't understand that. But for me, I talk to a lot of people. So, and why would I explained this in one of my YouTube rants. Why would I do anything with the Satanic Temple for money? I needed money. I was offered money. Like when I said, you know, like Kevin came along, I'm like, he's got to pay. And he did. Not enough. And they still owe me, but I digress.
And when you worked with the Satanic Temple, in the early beginning, of course, did you interpret it as a legitimate satanic group, or just a chance to get money and the group wasn't exactly a real group, which is a scam group? How did you view it?
I interpreted it, well, there's nothing to interpret. There was only possibilities. So all of those possibilities were on the table. And those possibilities were always spoken about between me and Doug and my ex-partner, forming a cult, getting control of people's money and their mind and their wallets. But that's no different than a soup company. You know, that's no different than people that are selling you fucking stuff to use to clean your clothing, toothpaste. That's what that is. So when we started working together, there was a lot of conversation about a lot of stuff. Well, we were going to do Might is Right Part 2. How would we do that? It's hard, you know, looking back, did I foresee it turning out the way it did or is? No. Doug did. Doug had a vision that this was what was going to happen. And when he started to talk about it and say that stuff, we started to sort of break away because, you know, it's just against my political nature. I'm not looking to take advantage of poor people without exchanging a patch or a medallion. I'm going to take advantage of you because I paid $3 for this. I sell it for $66. I paid $3. That's how I want to take advantage of you. You're basically, everyone's a walking $20 bill to me. Why would they be anything else? So a lot of that was in conversation, but so it's a cloudy thing because me and Doug had a friendship where we talked about that stuff for a long time. My work with them was strictly based on us using the word Satanism to, like a yes man group, to leverage a conversation within a film. Like you look at the timeline, like my whole history shows, I'm looking to leverage these things to start a conversation. So that's what my interest was in, and that's what I put my time into. I entertained, like I said, doing a Might is Right Part 2. I entertained a lot of stuff. But I broke away when it became something that didn't have heart. I say a lot of times I didn't want to be with a t-shirt salesman or something. And I sell t-shirts, and I sold t-shirts for LeVay. But the idea is that that's all it was. It was something to trump people or chump people. Or, you know what I mean? That's where it became. And it didn't have any kind of reality to it that I saw. Like even when I pitched, like, hey, ask Kevin if he wants to buy the rights to Might is Right from me. That's still tied into Anton LaVey. It's still tied into something that I liked. I love. I absolutely love Anton LaVey and his ideas of Satanism, and I loved publishing Might is Right back then until it was misinterpreted. And it took on a life of its own, which LaVey warned me of, and he was right. So when it got up to be something that I sort of, it's hard to put words to it, but it just got to feel that this wasn't the same thing as what I'm into. This isn't Satanism. You know what I mean? It became a tool for a rich man. And that's sort of why I broke away ultimately. But, I entertained anything that was, why would I talk to him? Because we'd worked together and done some cool stuff. we did a piece of work. Doug worked with me, did a piece of work that's still alive to this day. You should hope to be so lucky as an artist or a communicator. As much as people think that the Might is Right show bothers me, it does, because it shows my ignorance. But it doesn't, because I'm an artist and I want to talk about myself and my ideas and what I did and do. So that's cool. It's cool when it's something you create survives. So it's not, there's so many nuances, and life is a complex thing. It's not so simple as to say, I kept working for him for money. I could, there's so many, I don't believe a lot of choices in your life are one reason, though that you have to try to boil them down to one reason or two. It's complex. And especially the relationship with me and Doug was complex. And maybe that's why I do the timeline as it is. Our relationship was long and complex, and that's what I'm trying to show. I'm not sure yet with the timeline, but there you go. There's that answer.
So I know things happen gradually, but would you say there's any definitive moment you realized, oh shit, what has this group become? Or like a definitive moment you just realized that this was beyond anything that you could redeem, or it was just a horrible group and it was a con group, essentially?
Well, ultimately, what queers the deal for me is Golem. It is when someone turns to me and goes, precious. That fucking film. And all my shit goes in. That's where I've learned a lot of stuff is pop culture. But that Lord of the Rings, it's not a dog whistle, motherfuckers. Anyone says that, I'll fucking dog whistle your head. That is what it is. Like when someone turns me and like that moment is like, oh my God, I got the ring. Throw the ring somewhere. I don't want the ring, And that's when, and it's just a feeling or it's a vibe, but that happens a lot with me. More and more now is say like, I don't even think I could date a satanic person because it's like that. It's like that. It's so fucking heavy. Like people want to hurt me. All this fucking wild shit's like insane now. And it's like, oh God, that's sort of awful because I have a whole life. I wish someone would like one of my sculptures like that. Well, that's not, some do, but so it's that when I say it, try to simplify it, go, he wanted to go sell T-shirts. He wanted a wheat farm in Idaho or Italy. These are things we discussed, but those are the moments where it started going, shit, I could have a wheat farm. That's when I heard that whisper, that Golem. And it was like that vibe. It was just that vibe. It was like, oh, that's not art and fun anymore. We're not trying to cause trouble. We're not trying to shake things up. We're not trying to make fun. We're trying to make money. And it's essential in this society that we make money and do that all at once. Like, I need to sell T-shirts to talk about LaVey. But that's what I was doing. I was selling T-shirts and talking about a philosophy I loved. I wasn't just selling T-shirts. And I remember once pitching to Blanche Barton, I'm like, listen, I want to do satanic toothbrushes. I want to do everything satanic. She goes, no, none of that. And I go, you're saying no to me? You haven't said no to any product I want to put? And she goes, yeah, because all of it represents something within our philosophy. Decadence, aesthetic pleasures. Brushing teeth doesn't have anything to do with Satanism. And LaVey didn't brush his teeth. LaVey didn't bathe much, and that's it didn't make him a scumbag. That's just how he rolled. He just didn't do that stuff. But she was saying it just doesn't represent Satanism, which I thought was funny. It was only decadence. And she's like, she goes, I counter that with, I want you to do edible panties, satanic edible panties. And I'm like, okay, Blanche, but, it's just that vibe. I wish it was a moment I could say. I've tried to say that before. I've been asked that question a few times, and I try to say, yeah, it's this. I try to say those things, but it's just a vibe. It's just like this has become so. Your tone has changed, Doug. And Doug was I don't like how people use the word simp or how people look at things online. It's very juvenile. And I'm an older person now, so some of the juvenile stuff escapes me. I'm not looking to be involved in it. But Doug was a yes man. He's a person. He's like I do this too. I think that might be where we relate. We're looking to please people. We're people pleasers. We're looking to and he was that to me. He was a person who was looking to please me, and that changed. And when that dynamic changed, and he was trying to be a dominant, that doesn't work with me. I don't really work well with another dominant in the room when they're asserting themselves as a dominant. I don't mind I love working with all bosses, but watch your tone with me. Watch your step. And that's going to be forever. I don't give a fuck how old I am. You're going to watch your tone with me or else. And that might just be me leaving. You don't get the privilege of fucking my intelligence. So fuck you. I'm out. Doesn't no sweat off my back. Have that tone and you're going to lose me. So it's easy to lose me. And that's basically it. It was tonal, and I'm from a tonal culture. Part of the problem with the narration online is it becomes so fucking generic and weak because it's a tone of everyone across the globe. And it's like, no, motherfucker, I'm from Chicago. We're a tonal culture. We say fuck you in 10 different ways. It's all tonal. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck. It's all these tones. And so, I'm of a poor, brute culture. I'm a brute artist. So that tonal thing means a lot to me. So when I say precious, that's part of my culture, my brute artist culture. And so that's all I can tell you is it was a dominant tone or a greedy dominant tone that was beyond something I wanted to participate in. I don't want that person in my life. It's not that I didn't want to participate in what was going on. I wanted my cut or I wasn't going to participate. I wanted my respect, my money, I wanted part of the business or I'm not going to participate. But when I decided to speak out against the Satanic Temple was a lot different because I don't care. Like, go do your cult. Fuck you. And then it was seeing people online and seeing the people that was being attracted and being taken advantage of. And they look like everyone in my family. It made me sad. It looked like a bunch of poor people. And they are. Most of them are poor people. And that betrayed everything that I'm about. Again, my stuff is class specific. I am a downtrodden or a person that's down and fought to be where I'm at. And my family's from DuQuoin, Illinois. It's a very impoverished situation. We're talking instant potatoes, green beans out of a can, pork chops from the food bank. That's a good meal. I'm not looking to fuck with those people in a bad way. And so when that happened, to the visual, which is what I'm motivated by a lot, words escape me often. That visual really killed me. I'm sorry. Something in the air. I got allergies. And that's where I was like, this has really gone off the hook and it's really taken on a life and it's big and it's getting big. And I still am flabbergasted by how big it's gotten. But I'm happy too, because it comes back to LaVey and it comes back to an idea of freedom, chasing freedom, not money, chasing freedom, not pleasure, chase freedom, chase personal. The only joy you'll find is within yourself. So as much as I was in conflict and when I came out to say that stuff, I've eventually come to the terms, like watching Hail Satan with y'all. It was sort of cool. Like I said, I think I said somewhere with you guys then, it was like seeing something I helped make. And it's cool in a big picture. when we bring it down to just Doug, he's such a grain of sand in this thing, as I am. I might be a boulder compared to his grain of sand, but I'm still just a rock on the mountain that has been built. And, so it's mixed. There you go. I don't want to keep, I'll keep saying the same fucking thing 3 different ways. So trying to curtail that.
So you've mentioned the tone sort of changing, but would you say TST was always something shady that just revealed itself? And I'm talking about like Doug and Kevin here. Or would you say that it evolved into the shit it is now?
Oh, that's good. I would say that I don't have a lot of judgment in that in business. It's just what I will do or what I won't do. I think business and capitalism in general is shady. So we start right there. The need to make money and do this stuff is shady. Our system is fucking shady. The system I have to exist in is shady. So am I going to be shady or do shady things? Yeah. And I'm going to definitely do shady things. And it's not always going to be perceived as shady, because some people that are dealing in the shade with me are going to be like, yeah, this is just cool over here. Why would you want to stand in the sun? We're all shady over here. Yeah, we're all shady. So I'm of a criminal mind, let's say. Like, and I don't mean that literally, but I do. Like, I'm not looking to work for someone else. I'm looking for freedom. Again, I'm looking to search for freedom. I'm not looking to search for a job so I can fucking pay my bills and have a car. Fuck all of that garbage. What the fuck? Fuck you. I want freedom. I want life. I want to have that. So I don't even know if I'm saying what you're asking anymore. I don't know if I'm responding. What did you ask again? Let me hear that.
Oh, I was asking if TST was always something shady that, and when I say TST, I refer to Doug and Kevin here.
Every business deal is shady. Everything you're going to work on, if you're a business person, is shady. It's really easy to look at this kind of stuff when your perspective is, I'm just a paper boy. I just deliver papers. I just mop the floor. I'm a fry cook only. You're looking at things from that perspective right now. You're not looking from it as collecting money and coin for your thoughts, for your actions, for your art. And every hustle is shady. Lipstick is shady, bro. Like, women put this stuff on, all this, females, I mean, it's shady. So, yeah, okay. I don't give a fuck, about shady. So I don't think in the inception you can understand it by definition of being shady. You can just understand in the inception, it's like there's going to be some smell. there's something going on there.
Well, yeah, but you mentioned the tone sort of changing. So I'm like asking, was it always that way and it just sort of revealed itself more and more and more, or did it turn into that? Did the tone actually change?
I say that when I say the tone changes. The tone changed, and that's when they became different. I didn't see if I would have ever entered into it with Doug communicating like that, I would have done the same thing I did when I started to hear the Golem. If Golem came to me and said, "Please, Precious, come here and do this," I'm like, "Yeah, no thanks." And I have those offers often, or enough that it irritates me. So I'm not a person to sell out my ideals or my personal ideals. I'm not a person to sell that out ever. Like, ask the Lollapalooza, ask any group I've ever worked with. I'm real quick to quit when things go left. I don't like the idea of communicating as shady, because I don't know what that is. But when things go outside of the range I'm comfortable with, that's all I could tell you. And I'm comfortable entertaining ideas. And Doug had his foot in the door with me, so I'm comfortable taking a phone call from a person I worked with for over a decade. So yeah, I was comfortable in all those kind of things. I was never comfortable around Kevin, and I always thought he was a fucking insecure person, like an insecure, desperate person. And here's something that is really a tell that happens often to me when someone goes, "I'm just like you." When they tell that to me. Now, I've thought that I'm like, "Oh, I'm like this artist, or I have similarities to this artist." There's not a big problem with that. But when someone comes and says, "I'm just like you," and then I look at the body of this guy's work and I'm like, "You're nothing like me, bro. Like, how did you do so little with so much?" I did so much with so little. We are the exact opposite, actually. I did a lot with little. You did a little with a lot. And this is before Satanic Temple took fruit. This is when I went to speak at Harvard a couple times and met Kevin. And so if you're asking if I ever thought he was shady, consistently, I don't like rich people. I think rich people across the board are shady. And there's very few rich people that are like using their wealth to help poor people or help change our society for the positive. Kevin shows himself in that Lydia Lunch interview when he talks about authority and how rich people should stay rich but build more libraries, let's say, which is, talking about keeping power. I'm for dispersing power, so I hope that answers the best I can. It's a hard one to answer because it's so complex. Between me and Doug, it was when I heard his tone. So the answer is this: for me and Doug, it got shady when his tone changed. For me and Kevin, it was always shady. How's that?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And I would say, based on their perspective, Kevin probably saw me as always shady, and Doug, didn't until my tooth and claw came out. When I started to fight back, things changed in our relationship.
You probably get this question often, but I'm going to sort of phrase it in a different manner. Looking back on the events, would you have done different? And do you feel like you have any quote unquote responsibility for what this group became?
Oh, that's good. No, I don't have responsibility for fucking nothing, actually, for nothing in artwork. I don't have a responsibility for how people interpret Might is Right. I don't have any responsibility for how people interpret what I said on the Might is Right show. How could I? I don't have control of their minds. How could I? I don't have a responsibility for what became, because that's a horde of people pushing it forward. People are believing in what this person's saying. It's like saying I have responsibility for Edward Bernays selling spaghetti in a can because he knew he could trick people into buying spaghetti in a can. I don't really have too much responsibility for the ills of society. My responsibility is, as an artist, just to create and express myself. And I'm a very generous artist where I share my expression to the point of it causing people to want to be upset about it. So, I have a mixed emotions about the Satanic Temple. A lot of folks like yourselves are seekers. So I don't have a problem. I met so many people from the Satanic Temple, or were in it, or even still are, that are really cool people. And they're trying to get a hold of the idea and trying to figure things out. It's hard for me to judge someone that's trying to figure things out as an elder that has figured it out. I have to look at their intent. The same thing I say with that timeline, look at our intent. So it's hard to feel responsibility for other people's perceptions and how they see things. I dealt with anything I felt I had a responsibility for when I took Might is Right off my website, because I didn't want to be associated with how people were interpreting it. And so that was like, that's where I took my responsibility. And I took my responsibility, to communicate the best I can about the stuff that's been weaponized online, because I don't like that it's something that can hurt so many people, and it's what I've said continuously. It doesn't fit within Satanism. So, as a person who was given authority by Anton LaVey to speak about Satanism, that is something I feel a responsibility to. Okay, as little as a Satanist can have an obligation to stuff like that, I do. I feel an obligation to my friend Anton LaVey, and I feel an obligation to represent Satanism proper, or let people know I made a mistake there. So yeah, that I feel responsibility for, and I've been trying to do that by saying, that was a mistake. Saying these words for shock and upsetting such a broad swatch of people is anti-satanic. Why would I do that? Why? You know, that was not the intention, but it's anti anything that I stand for within Satanism. And so I feel a definite responsibility to represent Satanism in the way I think Anton LaVey would be proud.
There we go. Moving it back a bit, were you ever involved in all the tenant changes that they had, or like the initial conception of what their quote unquote religious values were?
Yo, baby, I'm that fucking muse. I'm Doug's biggest inspiration. So, yeah, I would say so, but not in a direct way necessarily. That I can. I mean, the guy picked my brain plenty, and I think it shows in some of their work. But a direct involvement, I can't remember. I can't remember. Specifically everything we spoke of when it was direct. But there was a lot of foundational conversation. You conversate with me a lot. So there's a lot of these ideas or theories I'll put forward and see them in writing later on from other people. And so that did happen throughout a lot of what I've seen with the Satanic Temple. I know that like the empathy thing and compassion thing that he talks shit about comes out of the Year at the Wheel trip, and that comes from me and my ex-partner. That's what when we went on that Satanic pilgrimage, that's where I continued to communicate like our philosophy's flawed if we don't have this in there. There's a flaw here, and that's what I was struggling with on the beach when I lived there doing that book. And when Doug, I don't have that in the thing. Doug came out to visit us at the beach, and we started to sort of move apart at that moment because I'm like, there's something flawed here, and it's again that things were not connecting. These dots weren't connecting for me, especially after that road trip within the Satanic philosophy. And so I was like, so that part of it is definitely coming from my perspective on what I saw on that road trip, and that grew and grew. Doug, if Doug were going to say he has empathy or compassion, I could see the joke behind the scene. I have compassion for you, so I'm going to kill you. You're an idiot. I have empathy. I feel you because you're so fucking stupid. I feel your stupidity, and now you must die. I get those jokes, and so I don't. I shouldn't put the guy down because I don't know how he's grown or what he's doing either. I mean, and he should be held. He should try to figure out how to communicate himself better because I haven't seen him have too much remorse or too much communication to people to communicate that stuff. So it seems like he's hell bent on a certain situation, and I think his foundation is different than mine. He's more of a person who's looking for control and stuff like that. But certainly, I had if I look back on my emails with him, there are things in those emails that you could dissect and say that had an influence or not. I don't know if I could because I don't even know their tenets too much. To this day, I don't really know. I mean, I just know the empathy, compassion thing came from our road trip, and Doug would call us on the road trip, and I would continue to say there's something flawed with what this might is right. There's something flawed here. There's something wrong with what we had a hand in, what was going on there. There's something wrong. And the more and more people that trusted me in their homes, that fed me, the more and more that I saw on that road trip, that's what I came up with. And it was not only that, it was just watching the animals on the coast, watching the eagles and the salmon exist, symbiotic relationship, predator and prey. It wasn't as perverse. There was you'd see these animals eating each other, and they had a sense of almost like you hear, you see a movie, and I know all natives aren't monolith and all this shit, but you see these old movies you gotta have this, you're gonna kill the animal, you gotta put the blood on you or whatever to have spirit of the animal, and you gotta respect the death. It was sort of like that amongst the animals I would watch. I was like, oh, this is what's going on. There's a symbiotic empathy for what there's something going on there. And so that's where that part came from. And it's not to say that Doug couldn't have had the same idea at once, but it is to say he couldn't have had the same idea at once. He was busy studying things at Harvard. And I was busy testing these philosophies in the real world. And real world is what a Satanist deal with, the real world. And so, yeah, some of that does probably come across in their tenets. I'd have to look at them all, but I doubt any of them mean anything. I know to be involved in that is to understand that we were throwing things together really quick in that moment. It was like grabbing from anything. I remember that was what was happening as I was moving away. Like, let's just write the Book of Satan. Let's do this. Let's just grab this text from here and do that. Let's just do this. And it was just like you would with any kind of art project. You start combining things or collaging things together to make it your own. All artwork is a derivative of something. So, that's it. That's what I know. What's next?
All right. So, concerning a lot of the obviously racist shit, let's just call it, Doug has said in the past, and I've seen this criticism appear a lot in TST circles. They'd say that why can't the same harsh treatment he gets for the stuff he said in the past also be on to you?
On to me?
Yeah, because they would cite similar stuff you've said in previous specials as well.
Well, it is. How is it not? I have someone that defaced my fucking Wikipedia section that really bothers me. If I give my name out to do a venue like in Brooklyn, it affects me. Are you fucking kidding me? That's outrageous. That's a really ignorant statement. That's a really, that's a really ignorant statement. And I think now that, there's a simple answer, and this book is part of that. Like I've been harangued about this stuff for so many decades. Doug hasn't. I have. I've been run out of towns multiple times, me and my partner, to the point of it totally breaking us. So they got to be fucking kidding me. I'd like to fucking hurt them for that. That's crazy talk. But there is one really obvious thing that I can see now, and it's something that Nannerl has pointed out, and you can see in the text. I am doing something that plenty of people have done, but I guess because I'm a plumber stock or poor person, I get held to a different standard always. I was like a shock jock, as Nannerl will say, and I look at that and I'm like, yeah, I basically did, like in the KKK show that I did. I listened to him like, oh, this is really fucking awful. This is harsh shit. And at the end, I'm like, I don't agree with anything you're saying. I don't agree with this stuff, right? I say that at the end of the show. So that's basically, that's basically it. But in that 24-hour show, and in the E for Eugenics show, it seems obvious that I platformed Doug, and Doug is going and using it to push an agenda or a theory that he believes in, where I'm just sort of sitting back laughing at it and enjoying the controversy of it. So I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference with that. I would say this, I don't think anyone's held us to a journalistic standard, Doug or myself. I don't know too much about what Doug has done here and there or what he answers or doesn't. You are dealing with this as a journalist. You're asking me questions and I'm answering them about those things, but no one else has done that. So how dare them even speak a fucking thing? They never came and asked me a question like, what was your intent? Then there's no journalism out there that's like that. So I would say that would be a good reason not to sit there and harass people, is because you don't really understand it. I would say that, like, where are the journalists? Where's Vice Magazine asking Doug about this stuff, or me? Where are they? People just run with the narrative. Like, I don't know, there's some podcast recently about something, I don't forget it, a big YouTube channel did something and mentioned, went on with Doug and all this stuff. And someone sent it to me and goes, look at this. They mentioned you in here, but they go after Doug a lot. And I'm like, but did they ever ask him or me anything? Like, what the fuck is this? They're just wanting to control a narrative for their own sake. I have a problem with those people, not yourself. I wish, if they're going to hold us to some standard, then do that. But ask questions and do that. Not this fake bullshit. And I think, I don't know anything about Doug, but I think he should be held to that same that kind of inquisition, let's say. He runs a group. He should answer for it. And I don't really know where he's going politically. You know, I know him well enough to assume, you know. But let me read you something from my introduction. I'm going to read you something here. Curiosity killed the cat, but what it found brought it back, and that's Iggy Pop. My legitimacy as a human, as an artist, and as a member and participant of many historic moments in counterculture history has been under attack my entire career and throughout my life. When I asked too many questions about the existence of God in my Catholic grade school, I was made to kneel on beans in the corner 6 hours a day for as many days as to amount to about a month. When I chose to tackle censorship with a zine I published in the late 80s, early 90s, I was attacked by the mayor of a suburban town outside of Chicago, my zine banned throughout the suburbs. When I held the Court of Porn, an erotic art show highlighting sex workers and women's rights in the city of Chicago, police force rushed the event, shutting down a major street to do so. The next day, they legally forbade me for entering my apartment as they labeled it unlicensed place of business. When I received headlines for publishing books of art and alt thought, some of which happened to be deemed obscene by the government, my Christian landlord evicted me and my family from our residence using armed thugs. Excuse me. When I brought black metal to the United States for the first time, the event The Expo the Extreme was rushed by dozens of police. When I did that same event a few years later, it was again rushed by police, a lot of police. This obviously hurt my reputation and relationships with artists and businesses around the city, and my legend grew around the city to be recognized as a person to be wary, if not afraid of. When I brought the actors from the film A Christmas Story to a steel mill town of Hammond, Indiana, in hopes of promoting literacy, I was made to sign a contract with the city that I wouldn't involve Satan or Satanism with the event. Why would I asked. The author was more subversive than a made-up force of evil. I was again run off town shortly after that. When I moved to a small Minnesota town and started a soda company to help a family member recover from a stroke, I was yet again run out of town for working with the Native Americans. Of course, this wasn't the reason used, though we had been warned not to work with Heart Warrior Chosa prior to the shunning. Random art and expression I had produced and propagated was used as leverage. Those who have pushed and promoted these unjustifiable attacks are always the privileged, the wealthy, and those with the position of power. They have used various good reasons to protect a system that protects them. From me, a poor person trying to participate in a system I was told was fair and equal to all, though I've yet to experience that fair and equal to all society. The attacks usually come after the attacker's arguments don't hold much water within the reality of the argument. The attackers are the same sort of bully they profess to be against. They want control over others. They want to dictate what is right and what is wrong. They are a product of the status quo and enlist and harvest the poor and ignorant to do their fighting. We are all guilty of ignorance. It's a hurdle we have to constantly overcome with critical thinking and a skeptical mind and the courage to be wrong in order to be right. It's the willfully ignorant that Anton LaVey considered stupid, and stupid is something the Satanist hates. Anton LaVey's clear about it when it came to hate. And he was clear that it was stupid to hate anyone based on who they are or what they enjoyed. He was a champion of free thought, and had no hate towards anyone or any culture. His willingness to discuss topics you wouldn't dare is what seemed to attract attacks on his philosophy as well as his legacy, and I can relate. That willingness to explore the taboo, to reveal and revel in the occult is what attracted me to Anton LaVey, and what attracts attacks to me. I go on and on and on and on and on. All right, I'll keep going. My days are numbered. These kinds of attacks have taken their toll on my heart, mind, and creative force. While I've always considered myself never not broken, I am now broken beyond repair. And for what? For wanting to live a life that was of want and not need, for wanting to say what I want and listen to those brave enough to do the same. Let me get this sentence here. For wanting to listen and learn and question everything and all things always, for believing in anyone or anything but myself and my truth, for not believing in anyone or anything but myself and my truth, for seeking truth and speaking truth, for continually questioning authority, for unrepentantly being me, because being me is the only real power or joy one can manifest. Some chase gold, some chase pleasure. I chase freedom. I have yet to find it, and I hope you do. There you go.
That was a very powerful introduction.
Yeah.
You want to take a break maybe from questioning, or?
Yeah, I would like that. I'll go get a glass of water.
All right, yeah, sure. We'll be back in about 10 minutes.
Sounds
Fine.
good.
All right, well, I'm here.
Hello. My cat's back. That was good. Boy, you said grilling me. I was grilled.
Yeah, and we're still on record, so
What?
I said it's still recording. I'm not sure if it should be recording or if we're done yet, or
No, Baphy said there's more to grill. I don't know how much more of me is left to grill, but there he said it.
Not much, probably.
It didn't. It's not much, actually.
I like to do follow up sometimes, but doesn't look like.
You go ahead.
All
You
right.
got something great out of me there just now.
I'm glad you shared that. That's a great introduction. Very powerful.
Well, thank you. Still working on it, but there's the early version.
All right, so welcome back. Here's a question I've seen a lot brought up from Reddit, actually.
I wouldn't know. I'm not allowed on any of those boards to defend myself. I've been banned, and I didn't even get on there. There's not even a reason.
Oh, I know how it is too. I've been banned from r/Satanism.
That's crazy. Anyway.
Okay. Right there.
I mean, that's a bad thing about the internet. They really people should not be able to block people on Twitter and then talk smack about them. That's crazy. I should be able to defend myself is all I'm saying. Anyway. I mean, on a public broadcast.
So, I just want to get this all there. A lot of people will refer to your Matt Dwyer interview. I think it was Lucian Greaves Part 2, the title. And they would say that you have a lot of statements on there about the Satanic Temple in Anton LaVey that contradict a lot of other things you've said. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, life is a bunch of contradictions if that's what you're going to look for. What specifically?
They would.
People know that things move forward. They change their mind. Like you guys communicate, your generation communicates different than the one before you and the one before that, and the one after you will communicate differently than you. So it's those. But what specifically?
I recall listening to it a while back, and I think something that I've picked out that they might be referring to is some of your comments about the Satanic Temple. You saying that you don't really like to involve yourself with that, and you having sort of a promotional attitude towards it in general during that interview. It was from 2013.
Yeah. What about it?
Well, you would promote. I think it was recently after the Pink Mass. You would mention that you weren't really involved in the thing, and just in general, the entire thing like a promotion for the Satanic Temple. So they'll refer to that and say that your statement contradict from various other articles.
You're breaking up a little bit, Baphy.
I am?
Well, just a little bit.
Oh, okay. Were you able to understand what I said?
A little bit, but I want to make sure I understood it. So you're saying that I have that interview and it's going to be in the book, a chunk of that. So I don't know what they're looking for. Maybe it's on the timeline. They can find answers to that question. But yeah, I worked with Doug and Kevin all the way up into the statue stuff. Like I was working with them here and there. They were paying me to write the Pink Mat. The reason that you know about the Satanic Temple is because of me. And it's because of my promotion, and it's because of my direction. And the Matt Dwyer is a guy I grew up with in Streamwood, Illinois. We were little boys. I knew Matt Dwyer before I was 16 years old. And so Matt Dwyer and me come out of this shithole. That's probably a bad word, but it's not. It's not meant to be derogatory. It is shithole town, Streamwood. It's all white anyway. It's not meant to be derogatory in that way, but a horrible town, Streamwood, Illinois suburb. And me and Matt are the only ones that made it out, that are trying to chase our joy, freedom. But we were bullied mercilessly. And anyway, Matt's an old friend of mine. And so, yeah, I had stories planted in Vice magazine. I asked all my friends to do stories and interview Doug because this is what I was paid to do. And I did it well. I did it so well, they have a huge thing right now. But is there something specific in that interview? I mean, I don't think I was too derogatory on Anton LaVey. Was I?
No, I nothing I've noticed. I can't find any specifics people have mentioned. I've just noticed that interview come up a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I did. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely was. That's what my job was. That's why everyone knows about the Satanic Temple. But at that time, it was still the pink mask. We were, you know, the idea is the Rick Scott thing came about, and I was helping then, and we're talking about doing this film. And Doug tried to get me to be Lucy and Grease for that, okay? And that's where I wanted editorial control. And that they wouldn't give it to me. And I also said, well, I want a part of this project, whatever it turns into. When you're doing an art project, you don't think it's going to turn into a film or a book or anything like that. Well, I want a part of all of it if I'm going to be involved in that way. And the emails that I present in the book, it show like, I tell them, do not use my name, do not use this stuff, because I wanted to be paid for that association, or I wanted to be able to agree with it. You know, and that's what that is. So yeah, I was paid to be there and do that. And at the time I was promoting a film or an art project. It wasn't a serious thing. I don't think they had one or two members when we did the pink mask. I don't think there was any membership actually. You know, there was nothing there. So I was promoting nothing. I was promoting air. You know, a lot of the stuff I see online like that, they apply things like from today, they like when I say like, yeah, Doug asked me to be Lucy and Greaves originally. Oh, that's outrageous. That's a lie. All this stuff was like, no, there was actually nothing there. It was just air. There was nothing there. You think it's outrageous because of how it's grown. But it's like, no, it was just like this, like, you know, hey, Baphy, will you put on this mask for me and take some photos? And you're like, then you do it, and then it becomes a big deal. You didn't you know, or you say no, and I do it, and it becomes a big deal. And you're like, well, Shane asked me to wear that mask first. The only reason you're saying that is because it got to be a big deal. If it never became anything, who would give a fuck? You know, it would just be another insignificant moment in your life. This became a significant moment in both of our lives. So it's looked back upon with significance, but there was no significance to it like that. Hope that answered.
Yeah. Now, you've said some things regarding criticisms yourself regarding Queer Satanic and Satanic Wiki. To quote you on Twitter, you said that people should look into who funds them. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, as much as, you know, what am I going to say about that? People should ask more fucking questions, period, but they don't. You see, this is the problem that I'm talking about in general with the online communication. It's just about using a narrative to your advantage. There's no journalism going on. I mean, you are practicing that now. So it's like, why aren't they asked all the questions that I'm asked or Doug's asked? Like, why aren't they asked questions? They're grappling to get power. And like I said something to someone's like on Twitter, and they said, tag, you're against a group that's like the Satanic, Queer Satanic. They'll say, you're against a group that's whatever the fuck their good guy badge is. And I'm like, yeah, actually I am. I hope they die. You know, I'm definitely against that group. And so I would say look into who's paying them. Yeah, I would want to know more, because I have a suspicion that things are tied together. I'm not going to talk about that now because it sounds crazy talk to anyone. But I've told you, I've told other people behind the scenes. And I'm pretty certain that it's going to turn out that I'm right, because I usually am when this stuff happens, when I'm like, something doesn't add up. It's the same young boy that used to be able to fix Rubik's Cubes real quick. That's me. Like I just could do, something doesn't add up here, and it usually doesn't. And I don't know how to explain it always. But there's something that doesn't, especially doesn't add up with the queer satanic group, and some of their ties are sus. Sus. Okay, so I would say, why aren't there? Why wouldn't people look into their background and wonder what their intent is? Well, the same as I keep talking about intent. What was my intent that went into this stuff? Not that I said a word that is upsetting to you, but what was my intent? What is their intent beyond the good guy badge? Where do they come from? And I think people should want to know more if they're going to use them as some barometer of justice or honesty or truth. But they don't. So they're going to get what they get. And they're going to get the same kind of thing they got for the Satanic Temple, but just a different T-shirt. It's the same kind of hustle, just a different T-shirt.
Okay, and for the last question, I'm thinking we wrap this all the way back to present. So what encouraged you to make this book?
Making sure, well, I'm into books and publishing, and I love printed matter. And I want to make sure before it's wiped off the internet that it's in a hard-bound book, first of all. Second of all, I want to try to, there's an attempt to control my narrative because everyone else seems to be able to control my narrative. And it's like, that to me is outrageous. It feels like a high-level violation of my rights as a human being. Like it's almost like someone walked into my house and used my silverware without asking. And I put that information online for a reason. I don't mind people having it, so I'm not afraid of it. I'm okay with it being studied and looked at and listened to. That's why it's there. I put it there. They wouldn't, like they would say, they don't have it without me. It's the idea that they call me a neo-Nazi. I mean, that is something that I'm hoping to drag them into court about too. And that's like the legal maneuvers that go on with court cases, as they said I haven't sued the Satanic Temple yet. Are they lawyers? Would they like to talk to my lawyers? Have they ever asked me why I don't do that? Because I could give my lawyer's phone number. My lawyer can answer to legal maneuvers and other things. But queer Satanics in our scope of this. Because they're saying things that are not true about me, and then they're taking things out of context, or, like it would be like taking a KKK show and using just the ugly parts without using the part where I say, yeah, I'm not about this. It doesn't really matter if your generation, this generation, or someone in my generation doesn't understand what I did as an artist or a communicator. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck what you understand, okay? I give a fuck about my intent. And my intent has been pure from the beginning. And it's going to stay the fucking same. Because I have something called integrity. And that's probably the bane of my existence, is my integrity. But I don't think anyone wants to understand. That's the gross part about the situation I'm in. I put up information so people can make informed choices and to understand what's going on, but they don't want to. And I say they, it's hard to say they because you do. Claudia does. And I don't, maybe a lot of your generation does want to understand it. I'm far away from things. I'm getting old. So I can't see the whole big picture anymore. It's starting to get smaller again, like it was when I was your age. It's a small picture, it gets broad. Well, it's starting to go back like this. And I wish I could explain it better, maybe, but Yeah. What did you ask for? I already lost track of the fucking question.
Just wanted to ask your motivation for creating this new book. Last question.
Oh yeah, well, control my narrative. You know that. And I want to make sure it's the problem I have with it, and I've discussed this with you and Claudia. Is like I don't want it to be a hit piece on Doug necessarily. That's not what it's meant to be. It's not meant to be a hit piece on anyone. It's meant to just why in the fuck would they exclude this history from their, like, why would they exclude, there's questions to be asked that no one's asking. So I hope the book ultimately leads to people asking more questions and doing more journalistic due diligence. Because if you're going to have a site like Satanic Wiki or Queer Satanic and you're going to act like a media person, then act like one. Do it. Ask the questions and present an actual full picture. And how fucks that are involved in Satanism cannot fucking understand like that simple thing. Like these people are taking small things to manipulate you. That has nothing to do with Satanism. No one of the actual Satanists is going to go for that shit. They're going to ask more questions and want to keep peeling back the skin. These people are using these things to weaponize poor people. And who does that? Who does that? Who does that in the world? There's a little answer to why you would ask who's giving them money. Religions do that. The government does that. There's people that are suspect that have a whole history of doing these things, the same things that Doug has employed, the same kind of tactics Doug has employed, and the same kind of tactics that the Queer Satanic is employing. And it's nefarious. It's nothing like Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. And like I said, what I represent is the pursuit of freedom, individual liberty, respect for people around you, or accept the consequences, stuff like that. If I'm going to try to hustle you like that, I'm going to definitely be doing it with Soda Pop, or what me and Doug were involved in with the Satanic Temple, which is an art project that grew into something that I wouldn't say I was upset. I wouldn't be upset. I would be upset about it growing into a satanic church, or I wouldn't be upset about that. It's the idea that it's not a satanic church using the satanic word. So you see, when you asked a question earlier about this, and it's like, here I'll ask myself, would I be opposed to being involved in the Satanic Temple as a religion? No, not if it went the satanic way, because it's using the satanic name. If, like when I spoke with Stanton, if we were doing something to educate people that are interested in Satanism about that, if we were doing something to protect people that were into Satanism, I'd be about that. And if it had to be blanketed as a church or a fucking religion to get some sort of tax breaks or rights that individuals don't have, sure, I'll leverage those tools to get our ends. I have no problem with that. It's what it became is a Christian derivative of Satanism, and that is not satanic. There's the biggest problem I have with the Satanic Temple. It's become a Christian derivative of Satanism, and that's dangerous. And I've said that repeatedly, how dangerous that is. LaVey's Satanism wasn't dangerous like that. It was so dangerous, it was shunned. Like, yeah, let's not talk about that. Let's not bring that book up. Let's not, that's a different thing. This is dangerous on a level that people are going to get hurt. People that claim to be a Satanist are going to get hurt. And that'll happen over time, because it's playing against a huge property, which is organized religion. And like any organized criminal or any organized corporation, they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep their power. So, there you go.
Yeah, I'd totally agree that TST is just totally it's Christian at this point. If you look at their pseudo-satanic statements, I mean, they're all vague, they're all political, and they all fit a big narrative that a lot of people buy to. Because Satanism isn't mainstream. Not everyone's going to buy into Satanism, but they have to turn Satanism into something that's not in order to get actual views. So yeah,
That's ultimately those are one of those nuances that bothered me when I finally said, "Hey, I got to do something." It was becoming against something I have a responsibility to represent. LeVay gives you that authority. I feel that way. I do. It's not I have a responsibility by law, but I felt like, hey, this is the wrong. You guys are thinking about the wrong shit. I don't want that on my gravestone. You put everything else on there. I don't need that. I don't need to say I was fighting the 0-1 with Christians. We turned our back on them. That's what Satanism is. We turn our back on that shit. We don't even, like Peter would be like, I remember early on, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to, something about burning Bibles on the, Radio Free Satan, I think Honey Helper, I wanted to burn Bibles or some shit. And Peter's like talking to me, ask them not to. Or he wouldn't say ask them not to. I shouldn't put that on him. But he was definitely advising, we don't do that. We don't acknowledge them. Why would we acknowledge that book? We don't. And that's what I'm saying. We don't acknowledge that shit, So it's like when the Satanic Temple turned into that and it became really strong, empowered into that. And I'm seeing these people that are like poor folks and stuff. I'm like, oh God, this is just like the Christian derivative, And that's something that awoke in me to speak out. Before that, I honestly don't care about people. They're going to do what they're going to do. What I do care. I shouldn't say it. I care a lot. But there's only so much I can do about cults, right? There's only so much I can do about people that are manipulating people, and I see it everywhere. It's part of a byproduct of capitalism, and Edward Bernays is the greatest black magician. He really fucking tripped the switch in people where, they're easy to move. They're really fucking easy to move, and they don't move with good questions. They don't move with honesty. They move with lies. They move with tactics like colors. They move with that kind of, they move with bling. They move with shiny things. It's like playing with kitty cats when you're playing with the whole of humanity. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I'm trying to stimulate a higher thought, or I don't even want to say revolutionary stuff, but it does become revolutionary when you're just talking about freedom, like basic freedoms, human rights and freedoms. And that's what my friend Anton LaVey should be known for. It's not sparking or feeding into a religious culture war. Why? All that does is Jesus Christ, bro. Fucking Christianity and Catholicism were in their death throes. They were done. With help, Marilyn Manson, all that, they killed it. They pounded the shit out of it where kids were not paying it. No one's paying attention anymore. The Satanic Temple is breathing life into this almost corpse of religion. That kills me. Okay. I was like thinking at some point, I'm like, yeah, we're not needed anymore. I really thought Marilyn Manson did such a great job, covering the earth, Satanism. He really spread the good word. He really spread the evil word. And there's his forefathers, Black Sabbath, all these other people, but he really did it. He really took LaVey's philosophy and pushed it forward and all this great stuff. And that's all they're doing is we went forward 10 steps, and the Satanic Temple wants to take us back 12 steps. And so that's the biggest beef I have. I don't know. Like Marilyn Manson, you got to look at who's paying who right now. You got to think about, why is Marilyn Manson on the rope so hard? He hasn't done anything half as bad as so many Hollywood actors. Why is it the Satanic guy that's up there? Why is it that the Satanic guy here, the Satanic artists are really having the shit kicked out of them? Why is that? Who's paying what's going on? But no one asked those questions. Even the Marilyn Manson thing, it's like, how in the fuck aren't people asking the people that are accusing him more questions? It's like, I happen to know the bigger name, I forget her name now. There's a lot behind that story. There's a lot she's not talking about. But I can tell you right now, and I wouldn't get sued for it.
Rachel Wood.
Yeah, Evelyn Rachel Wood. I could say this right now, and she couldn't sue me because I know copious amounts of drugs. She enjoyed beating people. She enjoyed hurting people. She was into the bondage scene. She enjoyed that. Why didn't anyone ask, so you enjoy bondage? You enjoy the pain, or you enjoy giving pain or taking pain? I wonder why that wasn't in their documentary. Because I would have really maybe sided with her. I would have been like, oh, because coercive control is part of a satanic. I would, say, there's some truth to that, and it's pretty awful, in a satanic perspective. And so, if she would have came out and was really honest, say, yeah, I was into this, but it turned out to be flawed, I would listen. But when it's only presented as half the story, and it's only I was abused and this is my abuser, get the fuck out of here. There's more of those fucking stories a lot of times, a lot of times. And people
I should date this recording. As of last week, Ashley Morgan Smithline has confirmed it was a hoax, and it is a hoax, just for on the record.
Yeah, but now they're also using right away. The flame came back to say she was paid off. She's being paid to say that. So there is money, lawyers. There's money being exchanged. She didn't get an HBO special or whatever without money. There's an active investment in hurting the satanic philosophy, and I'm talking Anton LaVey. Okay, what he did, that freedom-seeking philosophy. There's an active, big money into hurting it. And I wish there was more investigation into that, because the queer satanic folks are only serving that Christian narrative, and they're only hurting the philosophy of Satanism. And as is that Evelyn Rachel Wood, she's into Satanism. There's a reason she was with Marilyn Manson. And so there's an active force against it, and that's fine. But I guess in this Christian society, no one is going to question these things. It's just because it's a Christian society and Satanism's bad, and there's a 0-1 dynamic always with the mainstream. A big problem with Satanism going mainstream is they do need this 0-1 dynamic. It can't be just an abstract or a metaphor, that escapes people that don't read books.
Oh yeah, a lot of these medias want Satanism to be agreeable so they can get their good guy back. Hey, look, I support Satanists.
That's right. And I think when I hear a lot of the Satanic Temple people online, they don't read books. They're not well read. They don't have a clue. And I feel for them. Believe me, I do. I think that's where things have gone astray, because if you're seeking, a lot of Satanists are really generous and going, there's some books. Here, check this out. Let me send you. I got something for you to have you ponder, and let's talk later when you read this book. So I wish we got to that. I wish it would be more of that versus like huckster books with the name Satanism on them. It's really disgusting. It's really fucked up, and so it's like I don't want. I'm doing that you asked about. Why am I doing this book? It's reluctantly that I'm defending or trying to defend not only myself. Well, I'm not even trying to defend myself. I'm just trying to have my narrative out there. It's not like I'm I just want control of my story, and I don't want other people to have control of it. Like I want to have a say in myself. That I don't think that's unreasonable. But I also think that within that's the idea of, there's a satanic idea there. There's a satanic principle of, truth seeking, and I don't want to be occult knowledge. I guess I want to give people, like I said to you when I started working on this book, I want to give people the help give them information to make an informed decision. I'm not trying to bully anyone away from the Satanic Temple. What I'm saying here is I would like to offer them some books, some suggestions on reading. And I think what they're interested in is cool if they're interested in a individual freedom. But if they're into it to bully people about their political positions, just join a political group. Just join a political group. That's what you do. I like far left. I like I like, what are they called? Democratic Socialists of America. I'm a member of. You know, I like Bernie Sanders, so I'm political, but that doesn't have anything to do with Satanism. Has to do with my wants, right? Right.
Definitely, definitely. So, I think that can conclude the interview, or grilling, as it could be called.
You grilled me. You got some. It was leaking in here. It got in my eyes. There was a leak. Now, you got some emotions out of me. I'm happy. I'm happy that for you. I'm happy for you that happens. You know. So I do appreciate the grilling. I appreciate your concern, and you want the truth. And you can ask me any hard questions you have. You got any hard ones left? You can give them to me. You're not gonna hurt my
Yeah.
feelings.
I think we got a lot covered, and I'm guessing that goes to everyone who can be watching this. If they have any questions,
They're gonna be listening, right? You're gonna also use the video?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let me show something for sale. I'm selling these. They're very good. They're very nice. They're very beautiful. Listen to this. Fucking heavy. One more thing. I'm going to show you. I made this bag. Look at this beautiful bag. This beautiful fabric. I know you guys all think it's like digital printed. That's screen printed. Beautiful. Rubber coated on the bottom. I want to show something else. There, let me show you a sculpture. Too bad, Baphy. We're taking control of it. No, I'm joking. No one will even make it this far. Look at that great sculpture.
I love
you hang
that.
up?
I think you showed that too on the 24-hour special from 11.
That's me as a baby. But do you notice anything about this? It's a flower.
Yes, we talked about that. I remember now.
It's a flower. So this is when I first left. This is some weird, and it's got my hair in the back. It's not working. The magic isn't working. You know, I put the hair in there for two reasons. Hopefully someone will harvest DNA at some point and I'll be alive again. So maybe when you're 50 or 60 years old, I'll be here again based on the hair in those jars. And the other reason was a ritual to try to grow my hair back, but it's not working. So there you go. How long was that?
Well, that was about 3 hours.
Yeah, we got 3 hours on tape here.
Anything from you, Claudia? You got a hard question for me? You want to break my heart? Give it to me.
No, I think we covered all that we need to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
we got it great.
Is this going to help sell the book, or is it done? I'm done, right? This is the final nail in my coffin. Is that it? Is that it,
I think
Baphy?
so, yeah. I mean, there's a Hail Satan edit, but that's all done.
Wait, you think so about what? This is it's a nail in my
Oh,
coffin?
yeah, okay, I should say yeah, unless we come up with something else. Yeah.
Are you saying it is the last nail in my coffin? This is?
Unless we come up with
No.
something else. This is what we got scheduled. Yeah.
You mean I'm going to be dead now?
Well, then I have the last interview with you, eh?
I wouldn't mind that. That would be great. But are you saying that this is awful? It's going to really?
No. I said no.
I look bald there. I'm not that totally bald. Let me get this.
You're not dead. No. Don't die on us yet. All right.
I need someone to do my hair. Is what I need. I wish, you know. Anyway, this is what you get. How do you like the shirt I made? Look at this.
I love it. You always got the best shirts.
I make my own. Vomitos. That's Gigi Allen shit. I know no one likes Gigi Allen anymore. It's great though. Is that's a canceling comment? I bet.
Anyway, to everyone watching this, make sure to check out the new book Shane is selling. It should be linked right below.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Send me this recording.
Definitely.
Love to both of you. You're great. Keep up the good work.
All right. See ya.